an adult man sits on a bed with his son. They're holding a book in their hands. The man tells his child that his father was an adventurer and that they are all protected by the World Tree. The boy is surprised by his father's words. He asks the man where this World Tree is and thinks a little before answering. The man says that this tree is somewhere deep in the forest. There is a small village where representatives of different races live. A small apple falls from a huge tree. A goblin approaches it. The young boy takes the apple and sincerely thanks the tree and the spider. He runs towards his village. There is a whole settlement not far from the tree. The formidable werewolf greets the World Tree and wishes it a good morning. The young elf also wishes the World Tree a good morning. Another guy with blonde hair smiles and looks into the distance. The main character is called Kotonoho Sakai. He is a real hikikomori, a real hardcore NEET. A man in a dark, closed room with a lot of garbage on the floor. And on the table sits at a table with a laptop. The man calls himself an unfit member of society and looks at his dinner on the table. He considers himself not even a human being. He never leaves the house, but he had to that day. Sekai had forgotten what it was like to leave the house. A man on a bicycle races down the road. In the store near his house, a robber attacks the shopkeeper with a knife. He watches the counter. The first thing he thought was worry for another person's life. Right in front of him, the life of a store employee was in danger. Suddenly, the main character realizes that he has seen this girl somewhere before and takes a closer look at her. He recognizes the saleswoman as his classmate from university. He had one-sided feelings for her, and he didn't think he would meet her in such a place. He didn't talk to her directly. The man doesn't understand why she works here. However, throwing all thoughts aside, he crawls out of his hiding place and quickly rushes to help the girl. He shields her with his body. The robber does not understand who he is, but immediately stabs him in the stomach with a knife. A man tells a girl to run away through pain. She looks at him in tears but still runs away. The main character tells himself that everything is fine and he is happy with everything. He falls to the floor. Sekai is glad that the bag changes its life in exchange for his and thanks God for this. However, the next second, he finds himself in front of a huge woman whose appearance and clothing resemble some kind of goddess. The woman extends her beautiful hands to him and says that she is very sorry that his life ended this way. She says that he protected the girl from a robber but died himself. However, if he had not intervened even without his help, the outcome would not have changed. Sekai realizes with a degree of disappointment that he died in vain. The goddess agrees with him and says that everything is exactly like that and she is very sorry that this happened. However, in her opinion, the protagonist should know that she appreciated his intentions. The woman says that he is a common recluse, but despite this, he puts other people's lives above his own. The goddess finds his story truly beautiful. She recalls his whole life. It didn't happen at all. Nothing changed until the very end. The main character is annoyed by her monologue. However, he understands that she is right. The man realizes that he doesn't want to admit it. His life hasn't really given up on him. Because in fact, he never had anything. The goddess asks him for forgiveness and says that she shouldn't have reminded him of his painful past. The woman says she wants to offer him reincarnation, but she needs his consent. She asks if he wants a second chance in another world and if he is ready to receive this opportunity. The protagonist is amazed by her words and remembers that this is the same Isekai, like in the anime. He can start life from scratch. The man sincerely asks her about it. The woman says that before reincarnation in another world, she will fulfill one of his requests and asks what this young man would like. The main character does not understand what she is talking about and remembers that he died from a knife wound. He muses that he might have a power that would prevent him from dying from such a blow. Sekai screams that he doesn't want to die from a knife anymore and wants to be the strongest in the world. The man wants to be able to protect his loved ones. The goddess smiles. A portal with various magical runes opens under his feet. The goddess says that his wish is truly wonderful, and since he wished so, Who will he now live in another world? The protagonist compares his feelings to his mother's embrace. He feels warmth, and it makes him want to sleep. Sakai died and was reborn at the same time. He feels like he is moving to a new level, overcoming humanity. However, the next second he discovers that he has been reborn as a small sprout. The man does not understand what is happening and what it is. Sekai is surprised that he's some kind of sapling and remembers that when he asked for an invulnerable body that would not die, this is not what he expected to see. The sprout wonders what kind of life awaits him ahead. Suddenly, a man steps in the sprout with all his might and presses it into the ground, causing great pain to the main character. It turns out to be a plump young guy. He turns to another teenager and says that he really pisses him off. The guy says that someone like him should crawl at their feet. Another boy, Art, is lying on the ground next to him. He is all battered and exhausted. The guy turns around and says that the farmer's children will remain farmers until their death, and he will become the village elder and will definitely achieve this title. The evil guys burst into laughter. Art does not respond to the provocation. The tree calls the bad guy a bad fat man. The guy just stepped on him by accident, but it hurt like crazy. Sekai notices another boy who was bullied by you and realizes that he might also step on him, and eventually the protagonist will die. However, Art asks him if he is okay and realizes that it hurts when he is stepped on. The boy says that he would not want to be stepped on again and pities the protagonist, calling him poor. After a while, he makes a small fence for the sprout out of sticks and ropes. Art wipes the sweat from his face and says that now he is noticeable and no one will step on him. The boy says goodbye to him with a bright smile on his face and slightly closed eyes. Art walks away from the tree, leaving behind a small fence. Sekai is amazed by his kindness and generosity. He calls the boy good to himself and sincerely thanks him for the work he has done. Suddenly, he is covered with a small glow, and the man says to himself that he will never forget his deed. A bright beam appears above the tree and irrigates the boy. Sekai hopes that this boy will always be happy. After some time, the sun shines very brightly and scorchingly on the street. The main character dries up. Shares very thirsty. There is still no rain, but the sun is scorching. If this continues, it will simply dry up. Sekai remembers that good boy and hopes that he will come and water him. Suddenly, a huge slime appears in front of him. This slime puts its hand forward. A stream of water appears from his hand and it starts to pour on the protagonist. Sekai is surprised that some kind of slime is pouring on him. The protagonist says to himself that it is too kind, and the bright light starts to cover him again. The protagonist wonders if everything is really okay, because his small body has become even smaller. However, the slime seems to understand him, and is not at all saddened by this. Sprout says that he is very good and sincerely thanks the slime for helping him. After all, the slime doesn't care about itself, and thanks to its shepherd, it will be able to live longer. Sekai asks God for the slime's life to be wonderful. A small droplet flows from its leaf. It is again covered with a bright glow, and this color again encounters the slime. Then this slime came to water him every few days. The protagonist wonders where he gets water because each time he comes back to him large in size. One day, when it was a dark night, the slime came to a huge puddle. She presented her trunk to the water and was suddenly very surprised. The mucus has become much larger in size. She also remembered about that shining radiance and quickly hurried to it. At the same time, the action moves to a small village that was located near the growing tree. The young priest says that today is the coming-of-age ceremony in the Pocket Village. The skills are a gift they have received from their goddess. In their village, when they turn 14, they must undergo a coming-of-age ceremony and learn their skills. A young group of people stand before the priest. The man says that when they gain skills, some of them will be able to become adventurers. Art is very excited about this and wonders what skill he will gain. Meanwhile, The priest says that he hopes that they all gain what suits them best. Suddenly, in the middle of deathly silence, that same bully pushes Art in the back and tells him not to be stupid. The boy says that a loser like him will still get a useless skill, and he himself will get the holy sword skill. Art does not object to him and does not fall for the provocation. The priest calls the name of the Art and says that he is next. The boy with inspiration in his eyes approaches the stone. He touches the item, and the priest tells him that he has now acquired the skill and asks him to open the status window and look at it. He feels some changes in himself, and his palm lights up with a bright light similar to the light that the tree emitted. A status window appears, which says that the Art is blessed by the world tree and its characteristics are off the charts. The priest is amazed by this and shouts that this has never happened before. The boy has rancor, and this is simply amazing. The man loudly declares that Art has erred. Everyone is simply amazed by this. His father is simply surprised and very proud of his son. And his mother says that it is amazing and she sincerely congratulates him. The woman says that mom and dad are proud of him. Grud stands aside and tells him to watch carefully as he gains an even more amazing skill. There is envy in his words. The priest calls Grud next. However, despite everything, when he opens his status, his skill shows as a lumberjack. The boy is amazed that he got an honor skill. Everyone else calls him stupid and says that his father is a village chief, and he got such a stupid skill. Suddenly, at the end, a little girl runs up to the Art and asks the boy if he will leave for the village and become an adventurer. Art is a little embarrassed by her and wonders if he can become an adventurer. Beatrice, with an inspired smile, says that he has a very high skill and he will definitely succeed. Art responds with the same kind smile. His face turns slightly red, and he says that since the girl says so, he will try himself in the role of an adventurer. The boy raises his hand forward with a sign. He says that his skill is the blessing of the world tree. Art remembers that in that forest of roses there was a small sapling and assumes that it was the world tree. The young man and woman turn around and look into their happy future together. Art received the UR skill, the blessing of the world tree. Later, he became a famous adventurer, and now 20 years have passed. Art retired and returned to the Pokout village. A man carries his little son in his arms. He asks his father about the blessing of the world tree. Art says that it was thanks to him that he received that very skill. The man instructs him to always respect the world tree and be kind to it. The son agrees with him and runs away. Beatrice watches her son with a smile. The man says that the cathedral has probably already fallen apart and that a new one should be built. He tells his son to run ahead and he will come soon. He listens to his father and runs ahead to adventure with a smile on his face. After these 20 years, the main character has also grown noticeably, and now the tree is about 2 meters tall. Now it will not die if someone steps on it, but the trunk is still thin. Sekai notices that its growth has slowed down recently and does not understand what this could be connected with. Art's son comes to him. The boy understands that this is the world tree. However, in his mind, Sekai introduces himself by his real name and surname, and this year, he turns 20 years old as a tree. The boy notices that the fence is really falling apart and needs to be removed. The tree doesn't understand why it needs its precious little fence. At the end, he says that everything is clean. However, the tree is indignant and does not understand what he's doing at all, because all that was good for him for 20 years was this fence and slime. Sekai does not understand why he did this. Suddenly, he folds his hands in a conciliatory gesture and begins to pray as if to God. The boy thanks the world tree for its blessing and for giving such a powerful skill to his father. The tree does not understand what its new visitor is talking about. However, it quickly dawns on him that this boy is very similar to the boy who put up the fence for him. The tree assumes to himself that this is his son and cannot believe that this is true. Suddenly, Gila is called. Grudo's son appears before him. He carries a huge sword in his hand and asks why he needs this tree. The boy says that he will practice with the ball on it, and that it is the most suitable tree. but the boy interferes with him. The tree is amazed by such impudence. Jill stands up for the tree and puts out his hands. He won't let him do this because this world tree will become a great world tree in 100 years. The son of the chest laughs at him rudely and says that this small tree cannot be the world tree. He roughly grabs the boy by the chest and calls him stupid. The guy tells him that if he doesn't move, he'll cut him down first. Gil is shocked by this and sees his comrade swinging at him with a huge sword in his hand. The boy manages to jump back with lightning speed, and the son of the chest hits the ground with all his might, missing. Jill takes out a huge stick and asks the guy to stop this. He says hesitantly that he does not want to fight him, but his views are militant and determined in protecting the world tree. The boy begins to strike his enemy with a ton of blows and eventually manages to knock the huge sword out of his hands. The guy's sword ends up in the ground and he gets angry. The son swings his fist at him and shouts at him not to get carried away. His face is distorted with rage at his opponent. However, he does not have time to hit the boy. From the side comes a disgruntled cry that they both should stop this. It turns out to be Art. He carries a couple of pieces of wood on his back. The guy immediately treats him with respect. The man sternly tells him not to dare touch this tree. Art demands that he treat nature with respect because he may incur the wrath of Mother Nature. The son, in fear, apologizes to him and quickly runs home. Suddenly, the man turns to his son, and he's a little scared that his father is angry with him. But Art pats him on the head with fatherly pride and says that he used the techniques that he taught him. Art praises Gil. They made a new fence for the world tree, and Seikai is happy to himself about how sweet this idyll is between father and son. The protagonist hopes that Jill will be happy too. The same glow appears again. However, Seikai suddenly remembers that the two called him the world tree. After Gil left, the protagonist's life returned to normal. He assumes that he will probably grow up soon, but the growth rate is slowed down. Seikai wonders if he can become a big tree, or if he will remain a boring tree. On the horizon, Slime appears from behind the bushes. She waters the main character again, but he is surprised that she has grown very much in size. The slime on its tongue answers him positively, and the tree is surprised that it is the same slime because it has become very big. The world tree is surprised that he also brought him water and sincerely thanks him. Suddenly, even more small slimes, slightly smaller than the original slime, approach Seikai. These all turn out to be the children of the big slime. They also begin to water the world tree, just like their parent. The tree doesn't understand what's going on and says that it has been watered. After that, the little ones take turns watering it too. Now the main character of this war will last for a long time. Sakai is very grateful to these children and their parent. After some time, he grew a lot again and is now about 3 meters tall, but the tree is starting to worry again because its growth has stopped. Sakai assumes that this is because it lacks nutrients. A wolf comes out of the forest. He immediately notices a huge world tree in the clearing. Sakai is a little scared and says that it is inedible. The wolf turns on his paws and takes a certain pose. The tree is surprised by this and sees how hard the wolf is trying. The world tree asks him to stop, but the wolf does his job. The tree silently calls the predator a monster, but suddenly notices that he has suddenly begun to grow much faster than before. Seikai realizes that his sudden growth was due to what the wolf did, as his labor contains a lot of nutrients. The tree understands that it needs to be grateful to this wolf. Seikai again asks the higher powers for this wolf to be well. Some more time passes, and the next day, the same wolf returns. However, he has clearly changed and grown a little. Suddenly, the monster starts to speak and apologizes for the incident in front of the world tree. Seikai is amazed that the wolf is speaking. Meanwhile, the monster explains that he behaved incorrectly and rudely. The tree understands that he has evolved and has become smarter. He accepts his apology and says that thanks to him, he has grown. The wolf understands that words are not enough and asks him to take what is in his mouth. After some time, a whole mountain of various offerings accumulates at the crown of the tree. The monster says that this will also be excellent nutrients. All the wolves lay down everything they can and bow before the tree. They want the tree to accept this as an apology. The World Tree sincerely thanks them and says that dead monsters contain a lot of nutrients, and this, in his opinion, is the ideal option. Now he could grow even taller, and then the wolves began to come regularly and leave food for him. Because of this, he grew stronger, and then after some time this happened. He became quite tall, and now his height has reached 7 meters. After some time, people come to him. The old man says that this tree has become quite tall, and it is very good. The World Tree agrees with him and says that he is already quite big, and it is hard to believe that he was once a small sapling. Isekai notices their clothes and assumes that they are from the same village as the boy. The tree does not understand what they want from him and assumes that they came for help. However, suddenly an old man tells the men standing nearby to cut down the tree. Isekai is insanely shocked by their words and is deeply frightened. The World Tree is shocked and does not understand why they are trying to cut it down, because it did nothing to them. The man with the axe raises his weapon. The tree cannot understand what is happening and asks him to stop and not to do it. Suddenly, the barking of dogs is heard. It turns out that these are the same wolves that got a level up thanks to the World Tree. They drive people away from the tree. The entire pack of wolves growls menacingly at the people who want to cut down their World Tree. The people from the village immediately become afraid. The tree understands that these wolves are trying to protect it and is surprised by this. The old man does not understand what is happening. He is clearly in a panic. The man says that he will do as the animal said and will not touch this tree. The humans quickly apologize to the wolves. The tree breathes a sigh of relief and says that he got away with it, and that it was really dangerous this time. Isekai is sad that they can't hear his voice, and realizes that if there is a chance, he will have to thank them. The World Tree thanks the wolves again, and a bright light appears above it, promising a new level increase for the wolves. Meanwhile, the old man and his people go back to the village. He is unhappy that he was unable to cut down a good tree. The man says it would suit them perfectly, and he clearly doesn't understand what came over these wolves and why they did this. One of his companions points to another tree and asks him if they can cut it down. The old man says it is not comparable to that tree, but offers to try. Suddenly, a little devil is watching them from behind their backs and giggling. Some more time passes, and the main character already grows to 9 meters. And today is a truly significant day for him. He has no idea what kind of fruit it is, and he himself seems unable to eat it. It's just some red fruit. The slime comes to the tree and talks to him again in his language. Isekai is happy that the big slime has come again. The World Tree is pleased that he came to water it again today and sincerely thanks him. The protagonist realizes that he can give the red slime fruit as his gratitude. He throws the fruit on the ground and hopes that he will like this gift. The slime eats the fruit and exclaims joyfully. The World Tree rejoices that it has pleased him and thanks the Lord. Suddenly, the big slime is covered with a bright flame. It does not understand what is happening and is a little excited by what is happening. However, the unthinkable happens and the big slime gets royal clothes. The World Tree realizes that its old friend is evolving again. Suddenly, the slime starts talking. It addresses the World Tree, and Sakai is amazed that it started talking. The slime thanks him for his blessing. The tree is very happy that he likes it and understands that its fruit has caused evolution. Then, when the wolves brought him nutrients, the protagonist also gave them fruits. The wolves ate them with gusto. However, they too began to be covered with bright flames of light color, and also began to evolve. The tree understands that it has started again. The wolves evolve into human-like beasts. They walk on legs, but are covered in fur. Their leader wonders what it is. The she-wolf assumes that it is because of the tree and happily wags her tail. The other wolf says that it is undoubtedly the intervention of the World Tree. One of the wolves says that if they live here, they will receive the protection of the World Tree, and they should definitely settle here. The leader says that this is a great idea, but the she-wolf asks if just the four of them can protect the world tree. The wolf suggests going back to the den and bringing everyone. They should live here with everyone else. Everyone else agrees with him. All four wolves bow to him and thank him for everything he has done for them. They make sure to vow to repay his blessing. The world tree is surprised that wolves began to walk on two legs, and moreover, now everyone speaks, and they also call it the world tree. The protagonist remembers that he has grown quite large. He assumes that he is probably one of the largest trees in the forest, and yet the tree believes that calling it the world tree is a clear exaggeration. Then, after some time, a group of people came. On the stretcher is a sick, dying man. The man next to him calls him Holy Father and asks him to hold on. The tree understands that apparently these are representatives of some church, and their priest has fallen ill. Isekai realizes that they may need help. The tree throws its apple to the ground again. One of the church ministers offers the Holy Father a slice of apple and says that he now needs to gain strength and eat. After the priest eats, he suddenly feels strength and power within himself. His subordinates do not understand what happened and why the Holy Father has recovered. The Holy Father says that he does not know the answer to their questions, but he has gained powers. According to the old man, it was this tree that saved him, and there is no doubt about it because it is the most sacred tree in their scriptures. All the people bow to him and say that he is a sacred tree and his miracle fruits are magnificent. Isekai is embarrassed by this. Still, he realizes that it's good to be able to help people. The tree wonders what kind of religious group that was, and remembers that they talked about something called Eldritch. A couple of days later, a new creature appeared under its crowns. It was a crocodile. The world tree dropped its fruits on him because he looked hungry. And then this hungry lizard outgrew the lizard man. He thanks the world tree for its help and sincerely thanks it. Isekai notes that he has evolved quite a bit and wonders if it was worth giving him so much. And suddenly the lizard man takes out some kind of magic crystal in gratitude. He says that this is a precious stone called dragonite. It is produced in the body of lizard people for years, and it is a special magical aura. The lizard thanks him again for everything and says goodbye to him. In the end, he says that he will definitely come back here. The world tree says that of course it loves the valuable gift, but it can't do anything with it. The main character also remembers that even those who have not met him before still call him the world tree, and wonders if it is written somewhere that he is the world tree. Isekai realizes that the lizard left the crystal here because he was following his good intentions. After some time, the unfamiliar face appeared again. It was a very dirty-dressed man. He asks the sacred tree if he can take this stone. The poor man sincerely asks the tree to understand him. He sheds a few stingy manly tears and explains that he is a merchant and his name is Makoro Bolt. He was betrayed by his comrades and abandoned alone in this forest. The man picks up the fruit and is surprised that the world tree allows him to take the stone and the red fruit. He thanks for the blessing and leaves. Some time passes. The man returns to the city. He brings the stone to a special seller, and he says that it is the legendary dragonite. The seller does not believe that the man was able to find it and wonders where he got it from. The man opens the status window and sees Erskine there. He understands that it was not there before and it is probably a blessing from the world tree. They explain to him that he correctly assumes that it is all thanks to him that his luck has increased threefold. All this is thanks to the blessing of the world tree. After some time, he comes back to that place and says that he is the same merchant whom the world tree blessed the other day. The man says that he bought the land and decided that he would protect him because it was a small thanks for what he did to him. Isekai sincerely thanks him for buying the land. The man also says that they installed a sign that says that it is forbidden to cut down this tree, and now no scoundrels will disgrace themselves on it. The merchant was happy that he was able to repay his blessing. From that day on, his private army patrolled the area regularly. Ki, as he said, really cared about him. However, the peace did not last long. Those same priests came to him again. They began to dig up the tree. The man says that the sacred tree should not grow in such a place. The tree silently asks to stop this. The Holy Father says that they will take him to them and take care of him. The protagonist understands that this is the same religious sect. However, the men are noticed by a guard from the merchant's guard. The man in armor shouts that this land belongs to the master of Mokoro, and they clearly have no right to it. The priest and his servants quickly run away in fear. Mokoro is surprised and wonders what kind of people these are. He asks the world tree if it is okay. Sakai thanks the man. The merchant will protect him for a while, and he will be able to live in peace. After some time, the main character grew by 10 meters. However, the problem is still quite big because it is incredibly cold due to the winter. It snowed every day, and he had no way to protect himself from the cold. In fact, he gets cold even on normal rainy days, not just in winter. And insects became a problem. Quite a few different insects settled in his body. It would be fine if they were cute insects, but most insects only cause harm. He understands exactly that insects want to survive too, and he wouldn't mind if they just lived here, but they crawl inside him and eat him. However, one of the residents was able to rid him of the problem. A small spider eats a centipede that crawls on a tree. This is how the main character, the cave spider, realized. He learned the name of this monster from people who came to him and discussed the monster living in his treetops. Cave spiders, judging by the name, usually live in caves. Therefore, the tree does not understand why he settled on it, but he is grateful to him and is not even sure that he can thank him because he ate all the insects that sat in his body. It turned out that spiders are really very useful, and he is not even sure that his fruits will be enough as a thank you. After the cave regiment ate the fruit, it evolved into a forest spider. After that, he spread his entire web across the tree, and this brought the long-awaited warmth to the main character. Thanks to the spider, his life became a little easier, and they lived in a complete symbiotic relationship. One day, there was a terrible snowfall, and from the depths of the forest, a group of creatures appeared who were looking for salvation. It was a small group of goblins. They were all wet and tired. One of them suggests that they take shelter from the snowfall here. The tree notices that one of them is more developed than the others. Only this goblin could speak. The man asks what kind of tree it is and says that he feels a secret power from it. The chief goblin says that they will build a new village here. The tree is surprised. The main character cannot believe what the goblin said, because they are going to build their new village right next to him. The village beneath its canopy was too absurd for a Isekai. However, the goblins had already begun to build. The head goblin shouts to his subordinates to haul more wood and do it faster. The little goblins help with the construction. Apparently, it will stand in the center of the village. The world tree understands that they did not touch it and probably did not want to use its wood because they are afraid of harming it. Sekai thinks that a couple of twigs won't do any good and says that he'll help them now. He unfastens one of the twigs and it falls. The goblins are because the tree dropped a branch to them and say that is excellent and they should be grateful to the great tree. All the other goblins are inspired by this. They continue to build their village, and after a while a couple of houses are ready. Goblin says that this will be their new home, and everyone else is happy about his words. The world tree realizes that its branches are of better quality than the others, and the goblins immediately appreciate the quality of its wood. Its wood was used to build the headman's house. The world tree looks down from above on the goblins screaming with joy and inspiration. This picture fills the main character with warm thoughts. He sees the goblins around the fire late at night having fun and dancing together. After a while, the goblin says that they want to thank him because thanks to him, the village was built. The man pours a special goblin drink under the tree crowns and asks the world tree to try it. Sekai tastes the drink and is silently happy about how delicious it is. The development of the goblin village was going smoothly, but recently they had problems with food. So he threw them fruits, and then they sat on his fruits. The main goblin takes an apple and bites into it. By eating its fruits, they evolved into the Great Goblin. Those who did not speak before could now speak too. Now the goblins reminded him very much of ordinary people. Up until this point, all the goblins were short, but now they have become noticeably larger. The goblin girls have also begun to dress better, and their appearance has become pretty, and the goblin girl's face was already hard to distinguish from a human one. The main character sees a very beautiful goblin girl. Among the male goblins, there were those whose bodies were noticeably stronger, and some of them reminded him of a gorilla. If you think about it, they were already more like orcs in the opinion of the protagonist who was watching them. Sometimes at night they would have parties and dances. The World Tree loves watching this because it fills him with warm feelings. And then the spiders that lived on his tree were able to find a common language with the goblins, and he was very happy about it. The protagonist is happy that they existed, and there was no need for conflict. After some time, the forest spider began to eat the fruits again, and the goblins who were standing next to the tree froze in surprise, their mouths open, amazed by what they saw. In front of them was a beautiful girl who looked like a symbiosis of a spider and a human. The first forest spider evolved further, and she became an arachne. After becoming an arachnoid, she also gained the ability to speak and was able to communicate freely with goblins, which strengthened their friendly relationship. The chief of the goblins and the arachne began to discuss pressing matters. The World Tree also noticed that Arachno was talking to the goblin chieftain, and apparently they were negotiating. Isekai notes that they were most likely able to come to a mutually beneficial agreement, and he found it interesting to watch. Arachno and her spiders live above, and the goblins below. Their habitats do not overlap, so it will never escalate into conflict. The goblins made a deal with the arachnos that the goblins would provide them with their alcohol, and the spiders would give them clothes made from their webs in exchange. Most likely, the goblins made this offer. In addition, spiders made for bed linen, and now they do not sleep on a floor, but in a cozy bed. In exchange for bed linen, the goblins built tree houses for the arachne and her spiders, an ideal relationship from which everyone benefited. And that's how the arachne village and the goblin village developed. He was bored, so he decided to give the goblins names. Their leader he called Rind. The most hardworking goblin he called Gonzales. He gave the name Henri to the sweetest girl. She was interested in sewing, and that is why she became close to the arachne. The girl with the biggest forms, and the strongest, he called Maple. The shortest old man the World Tree called Goben. So each day passed, and before the tree could blink, life was simply boiling around him. However, recently they have started having problems with food again. The goblin leader says that the local monsters are very strong, and if they want to hunt, it will be very difficult. Client says that there are also very few animals suitable for food here, and wonders what they should do. The World Tree understands what they are talking about. The protagonist has given away too many fruits to various monsters over the past few years. All these monsters have evolved into humanoid creatures. That is why they are now either unfit for food or very difficult to catch and kill. The World Tree apologizes to the goblins and realizes that he himself has ruined the ecosystem. The protagonist wonders what he can do for the goblins and how he can help. Isekai realizes that he cannot move, but he feels like he can move his roots and wonders if he can move. One of its roots breaks through to the surface and scares the nearby slime. The protagonist suggests that they can eat its roots, or they will be able to grow some vegetables from the roots. For example, he assumes it might be daikon. Suddenly, its root turns into the desired vegetable. The protagonist is surprised that it worked and realizes that his root did not really become a daikon. Sakai tries again, but this time he does something similar with strawberries. The World Tree is incredibly surprised by this, but immediately understands that this is very good. The main character pulled the roots out of the ground and tried to create a local vegetable garden. And so, after a few days, there was a whole good harvest near the goblin village. The goblins who found these vegetables do not understand what they are. One of them suggests that this is also a gift from the World Tree. Sakai agrees with him. One of the goblins asks another if it is edible, and the second says that they should try it. One of them bites into the vegetable. They both exclaim that it is very tasty, and both do not understand what it is at all. They shout to their fellow tribesmen that these vegetables are very tasty. The others also do not understand what is happening. After some time, the goblins are already preparing food for themselves from vegetables that the main character made for them from his roots. All the goblins are amazed at how delicious and nutritious it is. The man says that it has a very good taste and the aroma is also excellent. With meat, it is generally very tasty. The tree is happy that they like it and its roots are able to turn into any vegetable or berry. The World Tree took away their food problem in an instant, and some goblins were assigned to oversee the agriculture. The goblin civilization continued to develop through agriculture. The man says that the World Tree is to thank for these very tasty vegetables. They also bring the tree a small plate of stewed vegetable soup. The goblins wish the tree a pleasant appetite. Suddenly, they say that one of them still hasn't returned. The man says that goblins from a neighboring settlement took away the most modest girl among them. Gonzalez angrily says that he will not forgive these goblins. However, the Rindos stop him and say that they do not know their intentions, and they must try to resolve this issue peacefully. The man says that he will not ask them to do this and will crush each one. The World Tree understands that Henri is really beautiful and he understands the other goblins' worries. And suddenly, one of the arachne's claws touches the headman's back. He turns and sees the girl behind him. She asks if she can go and save her with them. They agree. The elder thanks her for her help and asks if she will go with them. The man says that she will go with them and talk to them. The goblins decide that if peace cannot be resolved, they will go and sort things out by force. The World Tree understands that this is a huge disaster and he hopes that war will not happen and everything will be peaceful. After some time the next day, the strongest goblin shouts to the old man that they have returned and nothing terrible has happened. Henri walks next to him. She is fine. The tree is surprised that they returned so quickly. The other goblins ask if everything is okay with the girl and if she was harmed. She says that everything is okay with her. The bound goblins ask their relatives for forgiveness. They say that recently the monsters have become very strong and it was difficult for them to hunt, and they just wanted to eat. The strongest goblin says that they decided to kidnap their comrade for this. He is clearly angry. The elder says that the monsters have really become much stronger. Hunting is almost impossible. Henri remembers that things are very bad in their settlement. She asks if they can help in any way and turns to the elder. He says that if this does not happen again, then in principle they need more workers. The other goblins thank them. On this day, they celebrated the return of Henri. For goblins, a new day, a new holiday. The World Tree notices that they celebrated every opportunity, and Henri must have been scared. Everyone wants her to get better. After the celebration, Gonzalez and Henri met alone. The World Tree watches their relationship with each other very closely and understands that this is what he is thinking about. The young goblins hug each other and Sakai is happy for them, but begins to envy them because he himself cannot go anywhere. However, the main character is glad at least that he can watch the goblins make love. After some time, the same mucus that has evolved appears. She comes again to water the main character and he's surprised that she is watering him again. The World Tree understands that the goblins understood that the slime was doing all this for him. They always greeted them and supported them. The little goblins greet the slime and thank them for working for the World Tree. The hero understands that this is good, and he would not like there to be a conflict between them. The tree notices a little girl who keeps staring at him. He remembers that her name was Miyako. The Seikai address her as a young lady and asks if she needs anything. However, to the tree's surprise, the girl answers him and says with gratitude that she does not need anything. The world tree is amazed that she answered his question. Seikai wonders if she answered him now and says that he is a tree and no one can hear his voice. The world tree can't believe that she can actually hear him and is simply amazed by it. However, Miyako answers his question positively and says that she hears him clearly and distinctly, and not only that, the girl confidently says that she sees the appearance of a tree and that a tree in human form appears before her eyes. The main character is amazed that this girl can seriously hear him, and she is not lying, but telling the truth. Sakai can't understand why only she can hear him, while the others can't. Miyako also doesn't understand why this is happening and says that most likely their magical power is on the same wavelength. The main character is that the magical power works exactly as the little goblin girl told him. He understands that when goblins settled next to him, he began to grow much faster, as if he himself, without realizing it, was feeding on their magical power. The tree compares it to breathing oxygen and says that this is why, because their waves coincide, the girl was able to hear what he says. She agrees with his argument. The tree says that if she hears him, then he can talk to everyone. Miyako asks him if he wants to talk to everyone through her. The tree answers her positively and says that he has wanted to for a long time because he is very bored. He had no one to talk to, and every day he could only watch the life of the goblins. The girl asks if he wants her to be a translator. The world tree sincerely asks her about it. From that moment on, Miyako was appointed as a priestess of the world tree. The headman exclaims in amazement and asks if she is deceiving him, and if she really hears the voice of the world tree. The girl proves to him that she really hears him. The man asks if the world tree hears him and if it can somehow confirm this. He asks the world tree to drop something, one of the red fruits, in confirmation of the girl's words, falls right on the old man's head. The goblin is surprised by this and opens his mouth in amazement. He is clearly surprised that they can talk to the world tree and immediately says that all their fellow tribesmen should know about this. However, he says that he could gather them all and tell them about it, if the world tree doesn't mind. Miyako says that the world tree doesn't mind. In this case, the headman suggests that she go and tell everyone. They have a huge gathering. To tell this news, the elder starts talking and saying that they are starting their conversation with the world tree. The man turns to the tree and asks if there's what he wanted to ask them. A magical connection occurs between the girl and the tree. Miyako turns to the goblins and asks how Hanzas and Anri are doing. The village chiefs don't understand who this is. The tree remembers that these are the names he gave them himself, so they don't know who they are. Miyako says that the world tree gave them names. Rinda is amazed by this. The headman exclaims in amazement and tells her to tell them their names, and they will definitely remember them. After a while, she tells them all their names. The elders are surprised that his name is Rend. One of the goblin girls says that the tree knows a lot about names and that she has a very beautiful name. Another little goblin is happy that he now has a name. They say that if you think about it, it really was awkward without names. The world tree is happy that they liked everything. Finally, the girl turns to Gonzalez and Henri and asks them with a grin how they are doing. They are a little surprised by this question. They both blush a little and are embarrassed by the world tree question. Miyako smiles and says that she understood everything perfectly well without their answer, and the couple is doing well. The World Tree is happy that the goblins had a good day today and everything is peaceful. After some time, another goblin and an orc come to the goblin village. Rind is happy that Benjamin has returned from hunting and asks what happened to his hand. The guy tells him that the prey simply resisted. Benjamin turns around and says he brought an orc with him. The elder is surprised by this. He is amazed that this orc is just... The guy says that he might have gotten lost and agrees with the elder. Orca says his name is Ode, and he is lost. Benjamin helps him, and eventually they come to the goblin village. The elder is glad to meet him and says that they haven't met orcs for a long time. The man thinks that this is a new part of their history. They invite him to the World Tree to show it. After some time, the orc elder and Benjamin, along with a couple of other boys, stand at the roots of the World Tree. The girl explains to the tree that orcs are a small people, and they are much rarer than goblins. But unfortunately, orcs are not very smart. Because of this, orc life is hard, and chances of survival are low. Every year there are fewer and fewer of them. Orcs have always been good warriors, and they are the main fighting force. Goblins are also good at using their brains, but even so, they will never defeat humans or dragons. However, goblins can make orcs allies, and then they will be able to exist and increase their chances of survival. The elder says that he is now their new comrade, and he is an important fighting unit. They want to call him Org. Rind asks the World Tree what it thinks about this. The girl jumps down from the branch and says that the tree thinks it is a good name. From now on, he will be called Org, and the village chief welcomes him to their village. The girl presents the orc with a red apple. She says that the World Tree wants to give him the fruit as a greeting. The orc kneels down and takes the girl's hand. Then he bites it. Once again, a bright glow covers his entire body. Org thanks Miyako and the World Tree for the delicious fruit. He then turns to Old Age and Benjamin and says he will be happy to live with them. Old Age also feels the same way. Some more time passes and everything seems calm, but the tree notices something is wrong. He peers into the distance on the horizon and sees that they are werewolves. The World Tree immediately recognizes those werewolves who brought him various carrion, so that he would have nutrients. He has not seen them for a long time. It is pleasant for him. The leader of the werewolves looks into the distance and notices the village of Cobrino, which has already grown quite large. His face is distorted with pure anger and hatred towards the alien race that has taken his place to live. The werewolf screams loudly and asks who they are and how they dare to build a village under the crowns of the World Tree. He calls them impudent and pathetic green dwarfs. The World Tree is indignant that a fight could break out between them now. The elder quickly reacts to the dangerous situation and is already preparing to repel the attack. He asks what the werewolves are doing here. The man asks who they are and shouts that this is their village and that they would be better off passing by. The World Tree understands that this needs to be stopped somehow, and it does not want the conflict to escalate. And it starts to rattle its branches. The goblins think that the World Tree is angry and consider this a signal to drive away the enemies. However, this is not what Seikai wanted to say at all. He realizes that things are very bad and immediately finds Miyako, who is also watching the situation with fear. He addresses the girl by name and asks them to stop. She immediately understands him without saying a word. She runs to the Rendu. He turns his attention to her. He is surprised by what the World Tree said and asks Gonzalez to stop because the World Tree said that these werewolves are their own. He is surprised by this and asks if it is true. Sakai thanks God that Rind was able to calm Gonzalez. However, now he needs to deal with the werewolves, because they are still just as aggressive towards the goblins who built the village under its crowns. The The leader of the werewolves asks them what they are saying about the world tree, and shouts that they have finally lost their nerve and decided to get out of their way. He calls them parasites that nest near the world tree. However, suddenly, a little girl next to him says something that they said is true. The werewolf leader turns his attention to her. The little wolf says that what that girl said is true, and the world tree doesn't want them to fight. She explains to her leader that this goblin girl can hear the voice of the world tree, and she is its priestess. The leader kneels down to the little girl and asks if she can hear the voice of the world tree. He is surprised that it is true, and immediately stops being angry. The tree realizes that it seems that there is also a girl on the werewolf side who can hear his voice. The protagonist suggests the children are more predisposed to this, so only they can stop the conflict. Sakai is glad that they have stopped being aggressive towards each other and asks them not to quarrel. Both girls say that they understand him. They ask him if he wants to tell them anything else. The world tree says that she has decided that she will communicate with the two of them. Miyako and the werewolf girl tell their tribesmen that the world tree is asking them not to fight and to exist together. The werewolf leader immediately acknowledges this as the truth and says that the tree will obey. They say that it seems like these two girls can actually hear his voice. The werewolf leader apologizes for yelling at them, thinking they were bad guys who wanted to use the world tree. Rein says they were hostile too and are inviting new villagers to join him. The werewolves thank them. The goblin werewolves found a common language and were deprived of holding a meeting in the Rindo house. The leaders of both races arranged negotiations. After some time, they announced to their people that werewolves will live in this village, and they decided everything. The wolf says that they will exist with the goblins and protect the world tree. Everyone is very happy about this and exclaims. Then the goblins threw a welcoming party for the werewolves, and at first they were hostile, but now they were able to become real friends, because common fun brings people together. As a result, werewolves now live in this village. He understands that goblins, arachne, and spiders, one orc, and werewolves will now live next to him. He named the leader of the werewolves Wolf, and the girl who's able to hear his voice he called Mimiko. Goblins and werewolves get along well together because werewolves are carnivores and do not eat vegetables. However, all werewolves had great strength, and even in this forest they were able to hunt well. Therefore, they regularly went hunting in the forest, and thanks to this, the goblins were also able to eat meat more often, and this fact made them very happy. Werewolves were good warriors and could hunt easily. Goblins were famous for their intelligence and building skills. They were all certainly useful to each other. Arachne and her spiders made clothes and bedding for everyone. Everyone was warm and happy. Of course the werewolves had fur, but it was still hard in the cold winter. But thanks to the clothes, it became easier. And so for some time, their joint settlement continued to develop. Slime didn't yet know that werewolves had appeared in the village, and this time an unusual slime came to water him. Both the werewolves and the goblins stared in amazement at the new arrival. Slime says that she hasn't been to this village for a long time. Goblin asks what she needs here. She replies that she's a slime girl and has come to water the world tree. She realizes that the goblins have found new neighbors. Rind immediately recognizes her. He understands that this is the same slime in the crown. The girl answers her question positively and says that everything is correct and usually her children came here. As soon as they understand who she is, they immediately part for her and invite her in. The werewolf asks her for forgiveness and says that they did not know that she came to the world tree. The girl thinks that there is nothing terrible in this. The world tree understands that. Now this slime is pouring on it. Apparently, by eating its fruits, she evolved again, and now acquired human features. He thought that even though she was a slime, she was still very cute, and he decided to name her Catherine. After some time, she comes to the Rindo's house. He does not understand why she came to him. The girl asks him if they can live here too. The man says that of course they don't mind. The slime says that they have fun here, and she thought that they could coexist together. The girl says that they are capable of many things and can cleanse waste or remove toxins. That's how they came to an agreement with Catherine, and the slime also settled in this village. The World Tree was not against it, because in essence, it owes them a lot too. Rind introduces Catherine to the house that the goblins have prepared for her. The girl is incredibly happy about this, and thanks them. One of the werewolves invites the slime girl to go fishing with him, and she agrees to his offer. Catherine and her slime lived peacefully in this village, and everyone got along with them. In the village of the World Tree, the villagers got one more time. Someone was watching two monsters through binoculars. They turned out to be Miyako and Rinda. The guy who was watching through binoculars told the girl that everything was peaceful, to which she said that it was time to go and report to Mr. Mokoro. Suddenly, unknown people appeared. Individuals, overcome with excitement and indignation, shouted loudly towards the monsters, trying to find out who they really were and what secrets were hidden behind their frightening images. And then, on a normal day, they were suddenly attacked. The goblin did not understand why the opponents came here. He had no idea whether they wanted to steal the sacred tree or had some other plans that he did not even suspect. A small battle broke out in the village, in which both humans and monsters clashed. The girl quickly reacted and helped her friend dodge the blow. She knocked the unknown people off their feet with a precise blow to the ground with her magical power. After shouting, "Leave," she used magic again and dealt a blow stronger than the last one. This time, all the people present suddenly fell to the ground, taking a defensive pose. Despite the feeling of panic, there was still hope for the best in their hearts. The adventurers were looking for the escapees while they were walking away. The girl helped and asked her comrade how he was, but in response, she heard an order to return to the master as quickly as possible. The Holy Father, who held a high position and headed a group of these people, approached them with deep interest and concern, and asked them what exactly had happened that had caused this situation. In response to his questions, he heard that those who managed to escape were actually targeting a sacred tree that has special significance. This tree symbolizes not only a connection with nature, but also spiritual values. The Holy Father issued strict orders to get rid of them immediately before new reinforcements could be received, as the situation was becoming increasingly tense and threatening. He realized that this was indeed a great opportunity to demonstrate his strength and abilities to them. So he decided that he had to act immediately and set out right now. All participants came to a unanimous decision that it was necessary to make an attempt to defend the World Tree right now before they were overtaken. On the opposite side from the monsters, a small but determined group of people gathered, ready to face the danger. Shouting with a full sense of discontent and a ruthless determination to hand over the sacred tree, the people who had gathered from the church headed straight towards the monsters in the village, with great courage. Rin screamed at them to leave their village, but it turned out that these unknown people were from the Eldritch Church. Their Holy Father was furious that monsters had built a village here. Gonzalez made a remark about how the sacred tree, which has great significance for monsters, does not belong to anyone in this world, and Rind fully agreed with him, understanding the importance of Gonzalez's words. Realizing that they had gathered so many people to do something important, specifically to take over the World Tree, Rin shouted out loudly for those around him to stay at a safe distance from them. And now the moment had come when the monsters, who had been standing at the village gates for a long time, decided to show their power and began to attack. There was a noticeable tension in the air as they rushed into battle. When humans first encountered a high orc, they felt deep fear and anxiety. This creature, with its immense strength and terrifying appearance, caused them immediate apprehension and panic. The wolf monster, uttering a terrifying cry, declared that there was more than just an orc here, and with these words, rushed to attack the enemies. At this time, the werewolf girl joins them, using her abilities to help in this brutal battle. The monster boar, possessing incredible strength and fearlessness, deftly knocked people down with his powerful blow. Each of his attacks was so swift and precise that no one had time to dodge his attack. The Holy Father, realizing that all these terrifying monsters had gathered together in one place, felt great fear and, unable to contain his emotions, stepped back, full of anxiety and excitement. The monsters, full of delight and inspiration, joyfully celebrated their victory, enjoying the feeling of triumph and superiority. Miyako came out to them with a smile on her face, praising them for their work, noting their efforts, and then Rind, with an expression of seriousness, added that the World Tree, which plays an important role in their world, wishes to have a conversation with them. The main character sincerely expresses gratitude to all the guys for the protection they provided in a difficult situation. At this moment, Rin thought and noticed that not only the guys, but also the tree played an important role in their salvation. During the dialogue, it became clear that the hero realized something was wrong when he heard the sounds of battle at the moment when people attacked the Molkora mercenaries. The World Tree continued to reflect on how annoying and clingy the church representatives were, and seriously doubted their ability to abandon their beliefs and habits. The next day, Molkoro and his group of men showed up. Their arrival was noticeable to the locals. However, for Morocco himself, the situation looked completely different, and he hardly considered them a threat or enemies. The sacred tree, possessing wisdom and knowledge, assured everyone around them that they posed no threat and that they could be trusted. However, despite these reassuring words, Rind continued to experience internal doubts and wariness. He didn't understand what people really wanted from monsters and why they disliked them so much. The monsters remained alert and tense, preparing to attack. However, Mokoro assured them that he had no bad intentions and did not wish to cause harm. He was the same man who had saved the World Tree itself. Mokoro expressed his deep intentions regarding the protection of the tree, claiming that his real intention was to protect this important plant and not to cause it any harm. He asked if they had seen a sign under the tree, which it turns out he had put up because these lands belonged to him. Mokoro mentioned that in earlier times their community would independently ensure the protection of a tree that had special significance for them from the encroachments of people belonging to the church. Rind was greatly surprised by what he heard, and soon learned that the gentleman had been closely observing the life and activities of the village for a long time. The gentleman said that he had decided it was better not to approach the monsters, because they themselves were people. But yesterday, his mercenaries were attacked by those church people. These people showed much more persistence and tenacity than they initially assumed about themselves. The monsters did not even think that they would actually be like this. Considering the fact that the opponents turned out to be much more dangerous than expected, Mokoro decided that next time they would definitely return in larger numbers and taking into account all possible risks. He put forward an initiative for the monsters to unite with him and work together. Rin thought about the offer and asked if they would receive any other benefit. The master took out something from the bag. The guy sniffed and opened the bag. Seeing what was inside, he asked if it was pepper. It turned out to be spices. Morocco explained that for humans, this is a running outfit, and since they are monsters and have no money, they will not be able to buy it. Morocco also said that they had high intelligence, but they had no one to trade with in the village, so he offered to trade with him. Rind was surprised by the offer. Since the gentleman was a merchant, it could be said that by agreeing to cooperate, the monsters would be able to exchange their goods and gain access to new and varied products. Extending his hand in a friendly gesture, the merchant said that if they accepted his offer, it would open up new horizons for the village, allowing it to develop. Rind, hearing his words, found this interesting and promising. The werewolf asked what specific benefit humans would gain from their interaction with the hunters. Morocco responded that the werewolf's abilities could benefit humanity. This cooperation would be beneficial to humans as well. Hunting can yield many valuable resources and items that can be easily sold on the market. The monsters have agreed to cooperate and do business, which opens up new opportunities for profitable trade. The merchant also noticed that the goblins were growing vegetables, which would also be valuable at the market. This would give him the opportunity to expand his product range, offering customers quality, fresh vegetables. In addition, the girl slime has the ability to cleanse and provide access to clean water, which is extremely highly valued among people. In fact, it is quite difficult to find water that has such unique properties as mucus-purified water. And when Rind heard these words, a bright light of interest and curiosity shone in his eyes. Morocco expressed his admiration, noting that Arachne, along with her magnificent spiders, has the ability to create amazing and beautiful clothes that can capture anyone's imagination. He asked if the monsters now understood the enormous value of their village and asked if they agreed. The monsters agreed because it was enough to refuse such a proposal. Rind, with his eyes shining and full of enthusiasm, decisively shook the gentleman's hand, demonstrating his complete readiness and confidence, after which he firmly uttered words of agreement. All participants in the discussion agreed on the unanimous opinion that it would be more appropriate and comfortable to continue the conversation at home, where they would have more time and opportunity to discuss all the details. Rind, Miyako, the Lord, and several of his mercenaries stood in front of the sacred tree and looked at the houses built on it. Morocco asked Miyako her name. Rind answered his question and added that she was a priestess of the World Tree and could hear its voice. The master was surprised, but the girl confirmed this and added that the tree wanted to talk to him. Morocco's eyes lit up from this amazing and delightful sight, and he sincerely thanked the tree for hearing him and responding to his emotions. The merchant continued, smiling, saying that he had long felt a strong desire to thank him for everything that had happened between them. He felt that it was time to express his gratitude for all the kindness and help that had been given. The sacred tree spoke the same words. The tree expressed its gratitude not only for the tablet, but also for the protection provided to it by the merchant's warrior. As a sign of its gratitude, the tree decided to heal the wounds and ailments that tormented the guardian, restoring his strength and health. After that, the main character asked why Morocco did not interfere in the affairs of the village. Did he really guess what could have happened yesterday? The village was a good trading partner, so was that the reason the master didn't drive out the goblins? Asked the tree. The merchant, hearing the question, was surprised and replied that he had not even thought about such a development of events. Eventually, after much negotiation and discussion, Morocco and the village came to an agreement that involved protecting the sacred tree located on the village's property. After this event, several representatives of the human race began to live in the village who decided to settle in this territory. With the signing of the new agreement, life in the village has become much more convenient and comfortable for residents. With the advent of various spices, cooking took a leap forward, and food acquired new, rich, and vibrant flavors. Times changed, and the craft began to flourish, bringing joy and inspiration to the hearts of people. Everyone around was delighted with this wonderful change. Creativity and craftsmanship triumphed. Previously, they only used simple tools that were made by goblins, and they gave us the ability to handle basic tasks. The goods were of a quality that could be called simply unrivaled, causing admiration and respect. In addition, the goblins also liked the alcohol produced by humans, which turned out to be a real delicacy for them. At the moment when Rin started to taste the alcohol, Morocco was looking at him attentively. The goblin liked this alcohol very much, and he could not tear his eyes away. The merchant offered to bring more alcohol next time, which Rind was very happy about. When he brought more and more different drinks, the goblins began to drink almost every day. All the villagers were over the moon about the amazing changes they had experienced in their lives, enjoying the delights of rural life. And now, after a few years, they couldn't imagine themselves anywhere else. After some time, the main character grew into a huge and beautiful tree. Tree had thought he was big before, but now he was gigantic. Now he began to gradually come to the conclusion that he really did have some abilities and power. In the dense forest that stretched for many kilometers, there was nothing more majestic and significant than the World Tree. And he could not help but think that this tree was the largest and most grandiose in the world. The village also developed and became larger. After a while, it could already be called a small town. But at the same time, the tension of the forest became noticeably greater. The hero thought it was because he was radiating and was afraid that the more the city developed and expanded, the more it could harm the forest. But apparently there was no need to worry about it. Now the hero saw how big the forest was. It was even called the Great Forest of Reihano. But the tree did not know the details of why it was given this name. But changes have also taken place in the village. For example, Rind and Miyako got married. They had a baby and named him Ek. Despite the age difference, they got married because their feelings were mutual. The wedding was a big affair, and Benjamin got so drunk that he danced naked, and many men in the village were jealous. Rindu, after all, took the young bride for himself, and yet the village respected him as a reliable leader. Gonzalez and his wife Anra also had children, and this event became a significant milestone in their lives, adding joy and happiness to their family. The twins were named Rick and Sora. These two were active and energetic children, and their behavior always made everyone happy. Sora looked like her mother, and Rick looked more like her father. Their differences in appearance did not prevent them from adventuring together. When the twins were born, there was also a celebration in the village. But Benjamin's wife was more surprising, the tree said. Suddenly, Benjamin's wife called. He married a werewolf priestess, Mimiko. With a terrifying look, she said that he promised to look after the emerald. So that's why their child was half goblin and half werewolf. Their son was named Emerald. This name symbolizes not only his uniqueness, but also the resilience inherent in this stone. Emerald became the first representative of the powerful wolf-goblin race, which makes his birth special for the people. But the leader of the werewolf married the most beautiful werewolf girl. They named their child Jonas. He is to become the next leader of the werewolves. The spider swarm also changed. Under the aegis of Arachne, a new kind of spider evolved, jumping spiders. They were small, but very agile. In the mysterious forest, there were spiders that played an important role in reconnaissance operations. These creatures had exceptional skills that allowed them to effectively explore the environment. In addition, there was an increase in the number of orcs in the village, and now there were several more of them than there were before. New orcs arrived to the village, including females. Thanks to this, they found the opportunity to create their own families and pass on their genes to the next generation, which helped them continue their lineage. Now there were about 15 orcs living in the village, and all of them took upon themselves the duty of protecting the village. But one day, the main character also experienced changes. The sacred tree did not understand what was happening to it. It suddenly began to shake and glow. The monsters looked at him with surprise and incomprehension of what was happening to him. At this time, the tree glowed brighter and brighter and seemed to be surrounded by flames. From afar, the elf girls looked at him, and one of them said that there was no doubt about this light. It was definitely a new world tree. Suddenly, a surprising crowd of elven girls appeared at the edge of the cliff. They were dressed in beautiful outfits, as if they themselves were part of the natural magic. Above them, magic circles began to form in the sky, filling the air with an enchanting light. The monsters stood there in complete bewilderment, not understanding what was happening. All their attention was focused on the elves, who were uttering mysterious words and performing some movements. There was a tense energy in the atmosphere. The goblins began to exchange questions about what was really going on around them. However, no one could comprehend the situation, because suddenly elves appeared before their eyes, who simply came, and with their appearance, a magic circle appeared. Miyako, seeing what was happening, tried with all her might to stop them and asked what exactly they were going to do. But in response to her questions, they threatened to deal with her and those who stood behind her. Suddenly and unexpectedly, a huge hurricane appeared on the horizon, which was capable of inspiring fear and causing great destruction. The girls screamed towards the monsters, expressing their wishes for these creatures to disappear from their lives forever. They sincerely hoped that the monsters would never again interfere with peace and harmony. And then, at the most tense moment, the protagonist finally spoke. His voice was insistent, and he begged them to stop, asking for it with sincere hope and despair. Against the background of the surrounding landscape, it suddenly became noticeable that something began to separate from the tree, moving away from it. This phenomenon could have had various causes, but the most likely version was that these were spells left by the elves. One of the elves folded her hands and politely addressed the world tree. She introduced herself as Ella, and the tree was very surprised that she heard its voice. The elves began to cry and said that they were the chosen people of the world tree. The tree realized that all the elves could hear its voice and began to talk to them, hoping for a quick conversation. He shouted loudly that taking part in the fight was strictly forbidden. The elves, being creatures with an innate sensitivity to nature, were extremely surprised by the unexpected statement coming from the sacred tree, which for centuries had been considered a symbol of the wisdom and power of their forest world. A group of elf girls began pointing at the monsters that were near them and discussing the various characteristics of their races. The tree, embracing them with its majestic appearance, calmed their worries and said that since they had chosen to be on its side, they should peacefully coexist and find a common language with everyone around them. As Ella watched the mighty tree, she began to speak out her thoughts and feelings. She began to apologize to the goblins for her poor treatment of them and for disturbing them. Ryan stood there and did not know how to react or what to answer. Miyako asked the girl why they were in this place. She also wondered if it was possible that they had a connection with the tree, since the tree being wise, was trying to learn their history and relationship with it. Ella asked Miyako if she understood the tree and its meaning. Hearing a confident agreement, Ella continued. She noted that their previous world tree now seemed lifeless. The hero thought that once there was another world tree, but unfortunately, this tree was already dead. Now that he realized that this tree had ceased to exist, his heart was filled with sadness. Ella continued to talk about their previous world tree and said that Isel had died recently, so they went in search of a new one. The elves had traveled quite a long way to get here. They were very surprised when they saw that a city had now been built around the tree. The sacred tree, possessing the wisdom of millennia, was deep in thought about the fate of the lost world tree, which was once the center of life and harmony in this majestic world. It asked what a world tree is and how many of them are there in the world. Ella said that there can only be one world tree in the world. The largest tree becomes the world tree. It is for this reason that when the protagonist reached such a huge size, the previous world tree, which was once a symbol of life and strength, began to wither and eventually withered, depriving the world of its natural beauty and harmony. The protagonist was in a state of deep thought and regret, believing that his own actions had somehow caused the death of the ancient tree that he loved so much and to which he had once paid so much attention. The tree told the elf that the goblins had called it the world tree before. The girl said that it was probably some kind of premonition. The tree, feeling regret and responsibility for the tragedy, apologized for the death of the previous world tree. It sincerely believed that it was its actions or inactions that caused such a sad event, and this oppressed its soul. The girl insisted that he could not be guilty of what he was accused of, and this was a sort of immutable truth, since certain circumstances had already conspired to make the decision a foregone conclusion. She shared her thoughts that when a new world tree appears, the old one declines and dies. This process follows the natural course of things that happens in life and nature, where one generation is replaced by another. It was decided that the elf would not be harmed anymore. The tree itself was not against them staying, but the hero did not know what the goblins would say. The goblins were not against it. They simply could not drive out the people of the world tree. The main character, full of hope and optimism, sincerely believed that they would find a common language and be able to become good friends. And so the elves also began to live in the village. Everything was decided very quickly. It seems the elves knew a lot about the world tree, and will then tell him everything they knew. One of the elves began introducing the others. There were El, Aaron, and Alina. All the elves introduced themselves, and the hero realized that it would be difficult to remember and distinguish them all. Because they had similar names and their faces were perfect without distinguishing features. However, it is worth noting that all these creatures were distinguished not only by their intellectual ability, but also by the fact that each of them was given the power of magic. Their ability to use magical arts made them even more outstanding and unique. Tree was worried about how they would get along with the goblins and werewolves, but everything worked out, and soon they found work in the city, which earned them a place in the village. All the monsters were amazed by their magic. Elves could quickly light a fire, literally in an instant, freeze food, which could then be stored for a long time, and quickly dry laundry. But when the elves arrived, it turned out that there were no houses for them. Miyako suggested staying in the conference room, since there was no free space. One of the elves asked if it was possible to build new ones, and Rind answered that it was possible, since the goblins knew how to build well. He explained that they did not use magic for this, and that it would take several days just to prepare the materials. The elf girl said that she didn't mean that goblins were the ones who built the houses. The world tree could help with that because its power made it easy to build houses. She asked if the world tree would help them. The hero agreed, but now he could only throw off the branches. The elf was surprised that the tree did not yet know all its capabilities and asked about it. The girl claimed that with the power of the world tree, it was very easy to build houses and that their previous tree helped them in many ways, although it did not only build houses. The hero was confused and asked how he could do that. It turns out that to build houses, the past world tree changed the shape of the roots. That's all. Just a whole house could be created from roots. The main character of the story did not even think about the fact that from the roots of plants, it would be possible to create not only a wide variety of vegetables, but also something completely different that could surprise him or inspire new ideas. The tree, standing in its place, asked everyone to wait, and then began to diligently try to break through its roots from under the ground and push them up into the sunlight. And he succeeded. As soon as the root appeared on the surface of the earth, the hero began to stretch the roots further and form a house. In a matter of seconds, to everyone's surprise, a magnificent house appeared, looking very attractive. Nearby, in a state of complete shock, stood two girls, Miyako and Rind, amazed at how suddenly it happened. Looking at the house, the goblins were amazed at the house that had appeared, saying that it was already something divine. Watching the building, the goblins began to loudly exclaim, expressing their emotions. They declared that it was a work of art. Suddenly, the house that was built from the mighty branches and roots of the world tree unexpectedly collapsed, leaving behind only ruins and a cloud of dust. The elf girl said that the main character apparently has not yet revealed his full potential. She said that despite its size, the world tree still continues to grow. Like many other past world trees, the past also had its difficulties and failures, and did not succeed the first time. The hero realized that since he had room to grow, perhaps he needed to use his imagination more, so that he could do much more than the first time. Tree was upset because he thought that he had created a strong and reliable house for the first time, but alas, it fell apart right away. He thought that he could be useful for his village and its inhabitants. The protagonist sincerely apologized for his inappropriate reaction. In response to his apology, a goblin named Rind, with a kind smile on his face, politely asked him not to call himself so harshly. He noted that it was not worth criticizing himself so harshly. Besides, it wasn't all in vain. After all, now they had the materials and the goblins could reassemble the house, even though the house had fallen apart. In other words, with the help of the failed house, the goblins got building materials and saved time, rather than building a house from scratch. Although the tree answered that everything was fine, he still decided to try again. The hero pulled the roots out of the ground again, but this time he had just built a foundation for the house. Rind looked and said that this could also fall apart, but there is nothing terrible about it. Looking at the elf, Rind said that they would strengthen and quickly build a simple and new home. The girl was happy with this good news and thanked the goblin. Thus, it was this tree that created the foundations on which the houses were built, and the goblins, playing their important role, not only strengthened these buildings but also continued their construction, adding new elements and improving their designs. After several hours of back-breaking work, they were able to erect houses of impressive size. These buildings were comfortable enough to live in, so that a group of elves could easily be accommodated in them, providing themselves with a cozy night's lodging. In addition, the world tree gradually began to understand how this ability works. Very soon, the help of the goblins was reduced to a minimum, and they and the tree could now create beautiful houses. Suddenly, the world tree built a surprisingly large and beautiful house. The goblins admired this building very much, saying that it was simply amazing. Rin spoke happily about how he and the goblins would spend a lot of time building such a house. Another goblin added that it was the first time they had worked together with a tree. The elf girl thanked everyone and said that since the construction was finished, they would like to take a bath. She asked Rind if they had a bath, but the goblin looked at her with confusion about what she meant and what it was. The elf was completely stupefied and looked at her with a dumbfounded face. She furiously asked if they didn't have a bath in the city. But in response, she received the location of a nearby river where all the monsters washed themselves. The girl screamed that it wasn't enough, and that she began to see dirt on their faces. Miyako looked at her hands in a stupor. The elves asked to urgently build a bathhouse, so it was decided to build one. The tree promised to try. As in previous moments, the main character again began to create building materials. This time he focused on preparing a solid foundation for the future bathhouse, carefully selecting all the necessary elements for construction, and the goblins connected everything into a single whole. While the construction was supervised and carefully controlled by the elven beauties who had recently arrived in a Protagonist village. With the help of the elves' magic, it was easy to carry heavy materials. In cooperation with the goblins, the construction went quite smoothly, and the elves boiled hot water with the help of their household magic. After a few hours, the construction was finally finished. Together, they were able to build a public bathhouse. Coming closer, Rending and Zalis looked at the bathhouse with amazed eyes. In them, one could see admiration for the built bathhouse. When they got inside, they looked at a luxurious building with hot water. It was really luxurious. Gonzalez said it was quite hot in there. The elves suggested that they dive into the water, as it was much more effective and pleasant than swimming in the river they were familiar with. The monsters agreed to their offer. Hot water flowed through bamboo pipes, straight into a small pool. A jug and a drinking glass sat on a tray nearby. Sitting in the pool, Rind and Gonzalez felt all their worries melt away, relaxing and enjoying the atmosphere around them. They smiled as they discussed how wonderful it was here, where time seemed to stand still and how nice it was to just enjoy the moment. The elf girl was bathing at a bathhouse, and Rind told her that it was all very cool. She agreed and added that the bathhouse was part of their elven culture. She was naked and drying herself with a towel while saying this. But suddenly she realized that there were monster guys next to her. Covering her body with the same towel, she embarrassedly protested and asked why they were here and not in their male half. The monsters didn't know that there was a male half of the bathhouse. With the arrival of the elves, culture came to the city. Men got their own separate half in the baths, and they began to bathe separately from the girls. But just in case, a mixed bathhouse was also provided. It was specially designed for the elderly, so that they could spend time comfortably and safely, as well as for families who would like to have a good rest together. Watching the villagers, the tree thought about how tired it was from standing still for so long. It dreamed of how he would bathe, and it also sincerely wished to have the opportunity to plunge into the warm water and relax, as people did. When night fell and the sky turned dark, the full moon rose above the horizon, illuminating everything around with its light. At this mysterious hour, someone, relying on premonitions, headed towards the ancient world tree. They were elves. They were holding basins in their hands. The girls came to thank the main character for the effort he had spent today. One of the elf girls started pouring something from a basin onto the roots of the world tree and saying that it was probably tired. She advised it to have a good rest. Clouds floated in the sky and from time to time blocked the moon. And at that moment, the hero felt very good. It was as if he felt alive again. In the morning, the world tree still felt tired, most likely because it spent a lot of energy yesterday. So he thought to himself, it seems that everything is so, because such a powerful force could not be used without restrictions. The tree thought about imagination. It was necessary to think with the head. If it had a brain, it would have been tired already. Can a tree even have a brain? The main character thought about this. When he created vegetables, he did not get so tired, but still, the house was much larger and he created more than usual. He also felt like he'd even shrunk a little in height due to using the roots. It would be a good idea to practice a little more before using the power of efficiency. Also, with the arrival of the elves, another good thing appeared in the village. It was elven alcohol. When they gave it to the monsters, they were beaming with happiness. Rind and Gonzalez were the first to try alcohol. They said it tasted sweet and felt heat spreading through their bodies. They also asked what the elves made it from. Rumor had it that elven saliva was needed to make it. All the elves were beautiful, so the method of preparing their drinks did not seem to be a problem. Their alcohol also had a health-promoting effect. It supposedly prolongs the life of those who drank it. However, it was not something significant for everyone. Alcohol was a drink that was popular among everyone, and each of them was sincerely happy that they could enjoy it at that moment. The number of residents in the village grew and districts appeared. Next is what the village looked like. The closest to the world tree lived the Arachnes, and at the bottom was a slime girl. She was one of her race. Well, and then lived all the others. Goblins, werewolves, monsters, people, elves, and orcs. Mokoro's people, who settled as observers, at first did not understand how it was possible to live next to monsters. But very soon they became friends with everyone. By the way, if you are wondering why the main character hardly talks about the Arachnes, it's simple. They lived almost at the very top of the tree, not at the bottom. That's why they rarely communicated with those at the bottom. Despite this, they got along well with everyone because they knew how to sew, and they really liked it. Apples grew on the top, and one of the Arachnes was very happy about their ripening. In addition to their place of residence, their habits also differed. For example, the Arachnes descended only a couple of times a year, usually on holidays. By the way, there is something to be said about holidays. The elves prayed every day. They surrounded the world tree and said prayers every evening. The hero did not understand why this was. Maybe it was some kind of custom among the elves. The world tree decided to ask about it anyway. The elf girl was surprised by this. It turned out that faith was necessary for the growth of the world tree. At least that's what the elves thought. The tree asked if it was true. It turns out that the elves prayed to the main character. The more believers the world tree had, the more its faith and magical power increased. This is the information that the main character learned. The tree warmly thanked the elf for his kindness and support. It realized that its magnificent growth and development occurred each time various beings expressed their gratitude to it. This meant that their recognition had become part of its essence, and thus it could be said that it was also their merit. If you could think so, then all the elves are grateful to me too. One of them said that the tree must have already accumulated enough strength and faith to show its appearance. She asked to show them its true appearance. The hero did not understand what it meant to show his appearance, because he was right in front of them. But the elf explained that when he accumulated a lot of faith, he would be able to summon his avatar and then move and act freely. The tree could not believe it. So, if we assume that the world tree, even in this state, can really do this, and if its defenders are telling the truth about its meaning and role, then he certainly feels great happiness and joy from receiving such news. One of the girls sat down on the ground, looking up at the branches of the world tree. She began to ask it to reveal its true shape and form to her, to let out all its true essence and magical beauty, faith. This was the main source of the world tree's power. The more beings worshipped the world tree, the stronger it became. The young elf girl, with her wisdom and insight, explained that thanks to their unquestioning faith and devotion, the hero could perform real miracles in this world, filling it with magic and wonder. It was faith that could kindle powerful forces. A group of elves stood under the tree, telling him that they had been praying to him for several days. In that time, he must have accumulated enough faith. With her faith, the protagonist was able to create a humanoid clone. In this case, he would be able to move freely around the village. The world tree could not believe its capabilities. It frantically and very worriedly asked how it could do this. The elven beauty answered that everything was simple. First, it was necessary to prepare the body in the same way as the tree created houses. It was necessary to create a person with the help of roots. The girl asked if the world tree would try. After listening to the girl, the tree asked if he could seriously do this, namely, create a human. Wasn't that a violation of the laws of nature? The tree tried to speak calmly, without asking the elves any awkward questions. Putting her hands together and closing her eyes, the girl happily said that there were no taboos for the world tree. The previous world tree had already made a clone of itself, and everything was fine. Despite the girl's comforting words, the protagonist was still worried, and so he began to put his roots on the ground. It was very unexpected and unusual. The hero began to try not to create a house as before, but a clone, similar to a person. That is, just a body made of wood, or more precisely, from its roots. All the elf girls stood there with their mouths open in amazement as something began to form on the ground, and magical lines appeared out of nowhere around the roots. It happened. Now, there was a wooden man on Earth, the basis for a future clone of the world tree. The hero did not believe that he could create a human body. In addition, it turns out that he could add small details to the body. The hero realized that his roots were even more universal than he thought. Apparently, he could create not only vegetables and houses for the villagers, but also something else. Is there really nothing impossible for the power of the world tree in this world? If he can create anything as long as his imagination allows him to, then the hero could clearly create truly terrible things. Now the main character had to imagine the appearance for his body. But he hated his nerd appearance from the past. So at the moment he wanted a much better body for himself. None of the locals looked like the Japanese that the hero himself had been in the past, so this option did not suit him. Drivo was thinking about remembering a hero from the game and adding his past features. Besides this, the world tree wanted to take some features of the elves. After all, they were very attractive and beautiful. In an instant, features appeared on the body without any outlines of appearance, including the face. The hair was light with a small braid. The ears were elongated like goblins and a very beautiful face. All this was possible to do from the world tree, taking the features from their wishes. The elves admired the creation of the protagonist. But now this body looked more like a lifeless one. Because of this, it was a little hard to look at it. But it seemed that the elves were quite happy with this option, or rather even liked it. Whether this meant that everything was fine, the main character did not know. The World Tree asked what to do next after creating the clone. The elf replied that now it was necessary to occupy this body. The main character had to concentrate on it, then direct his strength and faith into the vessel. Suddenly a vessel appeared from the tree and was confidently directed at the body, with all the magic and faith inside, just as the elf girl had said. Now Sakai had to direct all his imagination and mind at this clone. The vessel, filled with mysterious magic and the faith of loved ones, was rapidly drawn towards the lifeless body created by the World Tree. The vessel touched the body with its tip and something sparkled where it touched. Immediately after that, the seemingly dead body opened its eyes. The group of elves standing nearby watched as the avatar of the World Tree began to rise from the ground. The spirit of the World Tree itself was already looking at the hands of its new body, which were trembling. Abruptly and surprisingly very loudly, the man who looked like an elf screamed. With his eyes closed and a clear smile on his face, he joyfully shouted that everything worked out. All his efforts justified his expectations. The hero said that since his rebirth into a tree, he had not been able to take a single step, but today a new page of his life had begun. In the background of his thoughts, one of the elves shouted that it was very cool. Rind and Gonzalez came running to the noise. Having finally gotten back on his feet, the hero looked at his snow-white hands and realized that he would now be able to walk. For him, this was very joyful news, which brought a lot of bright and positive emotions. The World Tree, which had already become a human, decided to first check whether his body was working normally. Only his height turned out to be shorter than in his previous life. He became about the height of a high school student. Having come to his senses, the main character asked if anyone had a mirror, and taking it in his hands, looked at himself. Seeing his reflection, he realized that he had turned out to be a handsome man. Elves stood behind him and were amazed at his beauty. Now the person could move and do whatever he wanted. For example, try local food and read local books. He would also like to travel around this world. But right now, he wanted something else more than anything else. The hero had wanted to relax in the bathhouse ever since they built it, and now he could finally relax here. But for now, he needed to return to reality and deal with other matters. Returning to reality, the World Tree saw Rind and Gonzalez. They could not believe that this was really the appearance of the World Tree. They did not expect to see the appearance of their master now. Tree remembered that it would be nice for him to greet them in this form, which he then did. Rind froze after these words and looked menacingly at the man, but then grabbed his hand and shouted beautifully. The goblin held the World Tree high and announced that today they would be holding a welcoming party for the World Tree. The man, still hanging in the air, said that it was not necessary, but the girl told him that it was a serious reason. After all, he was the master of the city and could show everyone his appearance. The World Tree saw how much they valued the opportunity to celebrate. Gonzalez said that every resident wanted to talk to the main character and that they would definitely all drink together tonight. That evening they had a welcoming party. In the evening, there was a grand party. Everyone drank, some danced, and some sang under the crescent moon. The entire village celebrated the appearance of the long-awaited appearance of the World Tree. Rind and another goblin were already drunk. Gonzalez, by the way, was not in the best condition either. In general, everyone was celebrating. At the World Tree, already in his form, they asked if he liked alcohol. He answered that to some extent, yes, but he liked drinking with everyone more. When he was still in the form of a tree, alcohol seemed tasty to him, but drinking it in human form was even more pleasant and tasty. One of the elves responded to the main character's words joyfully, saying how glad they themselves were that such a long journey had led them to him. Now they could drink with him. Suddenly, the elf girl asked the hero what his name was. He looked at her questioningly and thought. She continued and said that they wouldn't always call him the World Tree now. The World Tree thought. In the past, his name was Kotonoa Sakai. The hero thought he could say his name, but it was a different world. In fantasy worlds, there are also names that sound like Japanese, so it was possible to say your name from a past life. The World Tree decided to introduce itself to the elves. He gave his full name, Kotonoha Sekai. The girls looked at their master with interest, until he said that he was glad to meet them. The elven beauty joyfully said that she would definitely remember his name and would never forget it. Meanwhile, Sekai was happy that he had finally decided to call himself by his real name. This would symbolize the beginning of his new life in this world. Sekai then talked about many things with Rind, Miyako, and the others. This was his first time seeing this city through the eyes of a human. The hero felt like this was his hometown. He felt that there was definitely a place for him in this city, as indeed there was, because everyone greeted Sekai very warmly and joyfully. The welcome party was over, and the main character finally found his place, which he had dreamed about for so long, almost his entire past life. Now he could exhale and relax a little, and before that he could not even imagine such a life. The main character was in the bathhouse. He was sitting and relaxing in the pool after yesterday's welcome party. He clearly needed to relieve all the stress from himself and clear his thoughts. Sekai relaxed and wondered how many years it had been since he had taken a bath. Since his previous life had been many years. It was still good to sit down and relax like this. As he got up, he kept thinking about how much he loved baths. The hero felt his soul being cleansed after that. He heard footsteps. He asked who was there and thought that perhaps it was Rind. Suddenly, a group of elf girls burst into the men's half of the bath with quite a decent number of girls. They were completely calm, and their bodies were covered with one towel. The elves froze while Sekai shouted at them that this was the men's half of the bathhouse and what they were doing here. How did they get here? And most importantly, why if they had their own women's half of the bathhouse? The girls, despite the protagonist's concern, began to descend into the pool. One of them said that everything was fine and that today this place was only for him. In addition, the gentleman looked like a child. Sekai, in turn, did not understand what this had to do with anything. Her head slightly and continued that the elves were the peoples of the World Tree. So with a wide smile on her face, she asked to let them rub Sakai's back. Mr. Sakai didn't understand why this was happening at all. He didn't even have anywhere to look. The elves surrounded him and told him to turn around. The hero tried to stop them and shouted stop, but they did not listen to him and continued to do their own thing. The beautiful elf girls turned out to be persistent after all. One of the girls began massaging the master's shoulders and wondered why he was so tense. She thought it might be because Sekai had only recently begun to move in his new body. Another girl shouted at Ella to rely on her. She guaranteed to massage the hero's feet and said that after that he would definitely relax. Sakai was in shock and could not resist. With flushed cheeks, the girls began to massage the main character together. In the process, they were surprised at how tense the gentleman's feet were. He asked them to stop in horror, but they did not listen to him. Loud and expressive cries could be heard from the vicinity of the bathhouse belonging to someone named Sakai. At this moment in time, it was already dark outside, and a crescent moon rose majestically in the sky, illuminating the surroundings with a soft light. The protagonist came out of the bathhouse. He felt awkward, but the elves were really good at massage. Sakai felt his mind and body cleansed. Maybe they would do it again someday. Ella was walking next to the hero, and he asked her where he would sleep today. She answered that he could, as always, create a new home for the night. The elves appeared out of nowhere again, and Sakai asked why they were there. They replied that they suddenly remembered that he had nowhere to sleep. The girls offered to sleep in their house. The protagonist blushed and refused, but thanked them for the offer. Sakai decided to try to create his own home, just like Ella said. The girl looked at him and said that since he had settled in, maybe he could build a mansion for himself. The hero looked at his hands and remembered that he had been able to create a human body. If he could do that, then the mansion should be a success too. Sakai looked at the world tree, that is, at his appearance. His ability to create seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. But in order to use it, whether he would have to return to the form of the tree, he did not know the answer to that question. Even if it were so, it would be troublesome. Suddenly, the boy remembered how he became human with the help of a vessel filled with magic and faith. Whether he should use his roots or not, he had no idea. When Sakai changed his roots, they themselves did not decrease at all. However, only the magic power and the power of faith decreased. This is something that cannot be seen with the eyes. Sometimes, when Lord Sakai's magic and faith weakened, the tree creature itself would shrink. The tree would tend to be smaller, reflecting the change in the world around it. Raising his head higher, the guy saw that now his external size, that is, the size of the world tree, had not changed. Although no, on the contrary, it had grown a little. In other words, the main resource is not the roots, but the faith, which appeared from the praying beings in this world. There was a wind outside, and it blew the guy's clothes away with its flow, while he looked at his palms again and wondered if he could even use these abilities in human form. The next day, everyone gathered at the places where they could build a mansion. Rind, Henri, and the elves came there. Sakai stood in the middle and said that he would try to build a future mansion for himself to live here. The hero concentrated on building a house for himself, and with a serious face stretched his arms forward, but slightly in different directions. He was preparing to create his first home in this world. The next moment also shows a hand with what looks like a plant root coming out of it. Around the hand are visible lines that imitate movement or energy. The protagonist has started to feel it. Sakai's figure was dressed in a loose robe-like garment. His hair was short and disheveled. He stood with branches coming out of his hands, pointing upwards. He planned to stretch the roots further and try to shape them. There are glowing elements in the background, reminiscent of stars or glare. The guy seemed to be doing well so far, but no one knew how far he could go. But he decided to try anyway. Elf-like girls were watching the scene. One of them had an excited expression on her face. The other had a calmer expression. This time, Sakai was motivated to build a house for himself and prayed that it wouldn't fall apart. The protagonist was focused on the building. Glowing roots were coming out of his hands. As he thought, his body did not shrink from the magic power and faith he had spent. Glowing roots were coming out of the buildings, and then a large two-story building appeared. It had a gable roof with several windows. In front of the mansion stood Mr. Sakai himself and the elves. The girls were amazed by the guy's new construction and praised him. An elf girl with long hair and pointed ears stood next to the seated gentleman and adjusted his hair. The hero fell to the ground and said that he was tired, and the girl said that it was a good job. Sakai looked at it was a good job. Sakai looked at Rent, to whom he entrusted the inspection of the house, for which he thanked him. The guy stood and looked at his hand. His face was flushed and he looked worried. He felt tired after all. Apparently he had spent much more energy than he thought. It was noticeable how the gentleman's hand was shaking. Sakai felt that if he slept a little, he would feel much better. He tried to stand up while the elves stood over him. Ryan was standing nearby. On his neck, decorations in the form of claws or fangs were visible. His hand was raised to his chin, as if he was thinking. Most likely, it was the influence of the fact that the gentleman took human form to communicate with everyone. The girl looked at him with closed eyes and a satisfied expression, asking how he was. But the hero at this time felt that people's faith in him had grown even more. Communication through a translator did not have such a huge impact on people. To the elf's question, the hero answered that he was in good condition and thanked for worrying about him. Saying this, his hands were raised up in a gesture of jubilation. It was easier for people to see Sakai than to sense his presence, and he himself felt his strength growing. After examining the house, Ryan said that all parts were stable, and the master could easily enter inside. Sakai was happy about this and breathed a sigh of relief. The gentleman began to happily go inside, but a crowd of elves began to follow him. And the gentleman had hoped to get a good night's sleep in the new house. But he sensed something was wrong and stopped. Turning around, he loudly, almost shouting, asked why they were all following him. But the girl, without hesitation, calmly answered that they were the people of the world tree and therefore would take care of him. So they decided that they would live together with their master. Sakai uncertainly clarified because it was not even a request, but a firm statement from the elves. Leaning slightly towards the guy, the elf girl continued and said that they also lived together with the previous world tree. Moreover, the mansion turned out to be so big and spacious, there should have been a place for them here. Besides, it was simply impossible to manage such a large mansion alone. And the elves offered their last, promising to do everything, starting with cleaning. Someone would sweep the floor, and someone would do the laundry. The hero, of course, listened to the end, but they had their own houses. The girl answered that everything was fine. There were quite a lot of them. If some of them moved to Sakai, then the remaining half would have more space. The main one didn't even know what to answer them. Ella looked at Sakai with a pitiful face, which made one want to feel sorry for her. She asked if the master forbade her to live with them. Sakai, slightly confused, looked at her and could not refuse such a face. Still, he allowed the elven beauties to stay and told them to choose their own rooms. All the girls beamed and smiled as if they were not themselves. So much were they happy with the answer of the master. The girls were happy to be allowed to live with the gentleman, and he decided to go to bed. Having opened the door, he was already standing in his room. But the fun wasn't over yet. The elves were still following him. Sakai turned around and shouted indignantly. Why were they still following him? Obviously. The master will be lonely sleeping alone, Ella said. He could not take these words seriously and asked again. Already trembling, Sakai ordered them to go to their rooms. The girl, upset by the guy's answer, grabbed the guy's hand and said that they were very lonely without him. The guy did not expect such a frank answer. She held his hand and begged him. She said that without him, they would not be able to sleep tonight. Tears were already welling up in her eyes, and both of them had a noticeable blush on their faces. In the end, the gentleman agreed. Suddenly, the girl's tears disappeared, and she joyfully thanked him for being able to understand them. No longer holding hands, Sekai stopped them and told them to stand. After all, suddenly sleeping in the same bed was not right at all. Ella had an idea. She thought that it was necessary to do it gradually. And she thought that to begin with, she needed to start with hugs. The next second, she gently hugged the main character, as if ready to convey all her warmth to him. He was surprised and embarrassed by such an action on the part of the girl. Then she kissed him on the cheek and wished her master good night and sweet dreams. The hero thought about how tenderly Ella hugged him. For him, this was a completely new feeling. Even in his past life, he had never had anything like this. Lately, there were many more elves than before. They began to occupy a significant part of the city. They walked around the city calmly and got along well with everyone. But as it turned out, elves do not eat meat at all, and vegetable supplies are gradually running out. The main character learned about this from one of the residents, because there were fewer and fewer vegetables. And then Ella came with a tempting proposal. She put forward the idea of creating large farms so that there would be much more vegetables. Hearing this, Sakai thought about it and said that it was quite possible to do so. Until now, there were only small vegetable gardens here. Such gardens could not be called full-fledged farms. Mostly goblins worked there. At that time, the main character had not yet fully understood how his ability actually worked. But now that he had mastered it well, he could create larger farms. Besides this, the guy could also improve the variety of vegetables. Before that, he only knew the vegetables he encountered in the previous world. Well, now after trading with Mokoro, Sekai could grow vegetables that only grow in this world. They were very different from those that the hero saw in his past life. This time, he decided to try something new. And once again, roots were seeping out of his palms into the earth itself. Ella and Ryan were watching the process. They truly believed in their master. The hero wanted to build large farms on the outskirts of the city and plant different crops on all the farms. For example, tomatoes, cabbage, watermelon, carrots, pumpkins, and peppers. This was the best idea they could come up with so far. Thanks to this, they will never run out of vegetables. Moreover, we also decided to build greenhouses. Also, all vegetables need different amounts of water. Luckily for Sekai, the elves taught him everything and trained him. Now he knew what each vegetable needed. I would like to speed up the growth of the harvest. He said this next to Ella. She said that he was capable of this too. Suddenly, the girl pulled out a bottle filled with some kind of worms or stems. Ella said that this was the legendary growth stimulant that preserves their family. The frightened protagonist asked if everything would be okay, as he was very worried about the quality of the harvest. To which the excited Ella, stuttering, replied that it would not affect the taste of the vegetables in any way. Sekai looked at this mysterious bottle with an unknown filling, asking if it was too valuable a thing. The elf girl claimed that everything was fine, and that they had a way to mass-produce this legendary growth stimulator. After listening to Ella, the gentleman was surprised and responded questioningly to her words, asking if it was true. Ella exclaimed to her interlocutor that he could create a growth stimulator. Sakai responded with surprise that he understood her. Coming closer to the flasks with the growth stimulants, the main character thought about the words of the elf girl and realized that she was telling the truth. And with the help of his ability of the world tree, he can easily create a growth stimulant. Ella, standing behind Sekai, looked at him with interest, waiting for an answer, while he, looking at the flask with fascination, answered that he agreed and was ready to try. The gentleman confidently began to bring his hands to the growth stimulator. The flask with the stimulator suddenly began to glow, and lines similar to lightning appeared from it. Suddenly, there were two of these containers. The guy unexpectedly succeeded, and they split into two. The second bottle was exactly like the first. The slightly reddened hero shouted that he had succeeded. Now it was time to scatter this magical growth stimulant on the plants. First, Sakai poured it into a barrel. With a small ladle, he began to sprinkle it on the plants growing in the greenhouse. While he was busy with this, he said that it was necessary to do it like this. In a few weeks, it would be possible to collect the long-awaited harvest. The protagonist talked to Ella, and they were both happy. Sakai said that this way, with large farms, they would no longer need vegetables. The girl added that the excess of their fertility could be sold to Mr. Mokuro. Remembering the growth stimulator, the hero said that it was quite an amazing thing that helped the farm. The elven beauty said that such is the strength and power of the world tree. Looking again at his hands, which could create many things, Sakai realized one important thing. Apparently, in this world, the world tree is an all-powerful creation, and this power is very interesting. The main character wanted to try something else. The wagon of the cart was going to the village. The world tree was already visible from afar. By the way, it was Mr. Mokuro who came to their city. Upon entering the city, Mr. Mokuro was very surprised by the appearance of the image of the world tree. With almost wide eyes and a surprised face, he asked if this was Lord Sakai's true appearance. The visitor shook the protagonist's hand and began to shake it at an abnormally fast speed. He said that the appearance of the world tree was just like a god. Mokuro was very happy to see him like this. With a dumbfounded look, the hero agreed and said that the feeling was mutual. The respected man said that Sakai's fresh vegetables, as well as the elven and goblin alcohol, were very popular with his people. Sakai and Mr. Mokuro were sitting at the table in the hero's house. They could finally talk alone. Mokuro said that now everyone is happy that they can buy such products. And the guy said in response that now he was able to make wine of the world tree. The gentleman, surprised, asked again if the guy was serious about the wine of the world tree. The guy started telling how this wine was made. The resin of the young man was used for it. That's why fresh leaves of the world tree are added there. The locals called this alcohol, wine of the world tree. While Morocco was trying the drink they gave him, Sakai continued. This alcohol was very tasty and was great for relieving fatigue. It was quite a popular thing in their city. After tasting the alcohol, the gentleman's expression changed. It became very pleased with the taste of the drink, which he told the guy. He also assured him that his wine would definitely sell well. The joyful hero agreed with his guest's statement. The monsters, Ella and Sakai, were already seeing Mr. Morocco off. He thanked them and promised to start selling this wine as soon as he returned. The gentleman rode through forest and fields. After some time, he reached the city where people lived. The bottle of wine occupied the center of the space, its label containing an ornament and illegible text. The price tag showed the amount of almost $100. Morocco was asked if it was too expensive. These were people nearby. To the left of the gentleman stands a woman in a black dress and a white cap. To the right of Morocco stands another man with one hand on the back of his head. This guy was the one who asked about the price. Morocco. He said that this wine was made from parts of the world tree, which is why it was so expensive. The girl in black asked for one wine of the world tree. The master told her to come again. After buying it, the girl went home with the wine in her hands. When she came home, the girl warned her father that she had already returned. Apparently, her father called the girl by name. Sheena's father was lying on the bed. It was obvious that he was sick. His daughter told him that she had bought some unusual alcohol. The man looked at his daughter and said, "Only one thank you." He said that he didn't have long left, but at least he could drink alcohol. The image shows a round glass filled with a liquid that is shining. The cup is wooden, with a metal rim at the bottom. The color and aroma were amazing. It looked very beautiful. In fact, Sheena's father was forbidden to drink alcohol, but one cup was unlikely to do much. The man agreed with this and added that at least he could drink the alcohol he liked. Suddenly, Sheena's father jumped up and shouted that he felt his strength and health returning. Sheena was very scared and surprised by her father's reaction to alcohol and asked if he could stand normally. From the family's house, the head of the family could be heard shouting loudly that he suddenly felt so good. The guy with glasses, who was a doctor, examined the man and said that all this was simply impossible. Sheena's father became completely healthy. Mr. Edward's illness disappeared completely, as if it had never existed. The man and his daughter were in such shock that it was impossible to describe in words. It was amazing, and it all happened because of wine. Edward thanked Sheena for the wine she had brought recently. His daughter was very happy with this arrangement. Shocked by the news, Mr. Morocco could not believe it. He kept asking his dear guest again and again if it was real. Happy Sheena said that when her father drank it, he immediately felt better. The girl's father expressed his gratitude to the seller. Holding this magical wine in his hands, Morocco's hands trembled, as did his whole body. And now he was approaching the city where the main character lived. He rode there on horseback. He was still in shock from what had happened, because it was something new and truly amazing. He had to report this to the World Tree as soon as possible. Mr. Morocco told Seikai the whole story. He asked in response what they should do now. In general, the main character was not against it in principle. Let him heal. The slightly agitated merchant asked if he could continue selling this alcohol, and the guy said yes. Well, why not if he was helping others? And so Mokoro decided to promote the wine of the World Tree in the city. He believed that such a magical drink would become very popular and in demand. Alcohol that cures any disease. It sold very well. The merchants stood in the center of the city of people and advertised wine. They also restored former strength and healed wounds. Adventurers began to buy it instead of potions. The city's inhabitants were cured of all diseases with its help. Cries of joy were heard from all over the bustling city. Even if you drank this drink as a regular alcohol, and not as a medicine, it tasted great. In the blink of an eye, the wine of the World Tree became very popular. They say that later this wine became a legendary elixir, but that was another story. And the wine at that time was still being poured into many glasses of the inhabitants. In a bar in the city, two men were sitting and discussing the taste of the wine they were drinking. One of them said to the other that it seemed like the wine had come from the forest. The first man tensed up and confidently declared that then they would also look into this forest from where they had brought the drink. It was already dark outside, and the stars were sparkling in the sky. Rind, with a torch in his hands, was about to finish his tour of the city and go to bed. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to an open door in one of the houses. The goblin looked in, ready to attack if necessary. But he saw an interesting picture. The two men from the bar were sitting and hugging large barrels of World Tree wine. They were already drunk and their faces were red from the influence of alcohol. The carefree moon was shining in the calm sky. While from the warehouse, Rin's screams could be heard. He was trying to figure out who these unknown people were who wanted to steal the expensive wine of the World Tree. One of the thieves praised the unusual drink. The barrels of alcohol were empty. The thief called it praise from them. Sakai asked who they were. The hero was asked a counter-question, and he introduced himself as the city's World Tree. The thief, laughing, apologized and said that they cannot resist the temptation when they see delicious alcohol. The thief called himself a dwarf, and Kotonoha was surprised. Sakai was finally convinced that he was seeing dwarves in front of him, thinking about what he had heard about this people's penchant for good alcohol. Mokoro's assistant began to worry that they would be unhappy with them because of the empty barrels. The dwarf, feeling uneasy, asked if he could give something in return. The thief said he could make a couple of tools. The townspeople didn't understand what he meant. The dwarf ordered his comrades to get the field forge. Everyone responded to the call happily. The people set to work desperately. The chief dwarf blew flames straight out of his mouth. It was lit in the forge. The container was filled with coals. The work began to boil. Sakai does not understand where all this suddenly came from. The dwarf enthusiastically declared his readiness, raising his hand with the resulting tool. He asked for an opinion on his work. Everyone was surprised. Mokoro's assistant said that it was an amazing thing and much better quality than what they sold. Rein confirmed, saying that their axe was also easier to use. Kotonoha came to the conclusion that these tools would make their work easier. The dwarf said he was glad to hear that and suggested doing something else. He can make anything they want: swords, staves, bows, spears. The dwarf asked if they would accept that as an apology. Mokoro's assistant is amazed by the finished shovel and thinks that it can fetch a lot of money. Benjamin admires the dwarf's work and asks to teach them the craft. The dwarf says that they are out of alcohol. Rind is surprised that there is not enough, but an idea occurs to him. Rind suggests throwing a party and drinking all night. The dwarf hesitantly reminds them that they have already emptied many barrels. The goblin says that they can drink anything, since they are already here. The hero comes to the conclusion that they ended up in the black, since they forged tools, and alcohol can always be made new. Everyone was woken up for the welcoming party. The leader of the dwarves was named Ridaf, and he drank more than anyone else. Ridaf laughs and expresses sympathy towards the city. The werewolf invites him to stay and live there. The dwarf is amazed that they are allowed to stay in the city, as they are looking for a place to settle down. The werewolf leader says that their blacksmithing skills will come in handy here. Sekai agrees with the werewolf. Ridaf thanks them guiltily, realizing that they are being kind to them despite all the alcohol they drank. The dwarf leader decides that they will stay. The others cheer and wave their filled cups. Kotonoha offers Ridaf a snack of the World Tree fruit, calling it a gift, and receives consent. Thus, 15 dwarves joined the city's inhabitants. Everyone was happy to move in because with the advent of new tools, work became easier. The only problem was that alcohol production needed to be increased. Ella is worried that the city's defense is weak. Sakai is surprised because they have many good warriors, and the abilities of the werewolves and goblins are amazing. The hero also talks about orcs and asks the elf again. She reminds him of the dwarves' penetration into the city. Ella voices her fears that the World Tree may be targeted by enemies. She reveals that the powers of the previous World Tree were brazenly used. The elf thinks that in order to protect, the defense must be improved. Sekai asks how this can be done. Ella suggests making golems. Faced with misunderstanding, the elf explains that golems are stone monsters. No one knows how to create new ones, and the few that remain can be found in old ruins. Kotonoha believes that one golem can replace 100 soldiers, and asks if she knows how to create them. Ellie says that she knows. With her instructions, it is easy to make a golem. The hero suggests trying. They ask the locals to collect materials to create golems, huge stones. Isekai began the process of making it. He created the shape using large stones as a foundation, and using his abilities, he created several stones for the base of the body. Goblins and orcs built golems from these stones. Clay was used to glue them together, and the elves carved magic circles on them. The creation process was completed when Kotonoha inserted the fruit of the world tree. Ella began to revive the golem. The elf used magical power and summons. It was an impressive sight for everyone. Isekai called the golem a walking rock. Everyone is convinced that the city will be much safer with golems. The werewolf leader offered to take one with them on a hunt, and that day they made 3 golems. Golems are undead creatures, so they never get tired, never complain, and can even guard the city at night. The hero is convinced that they are now safe. Kotonoha Sekai cuts the fruit of the world tree. He puts the resulting pieces on a plate and eats one. The hero thinks that the fruit of the world tree causes the evolution of everyone who ate it, so he called it the fruit of evolution. Isekai remembers that he gave the fruits to the elves, and because of this, their ears became longer, their magical power increased, and they themselves turned into high elves. The dwarves became elder dwarves after eating the fruits. Their growth increased significantly, which pleased them. The orcs evolved into great orcs, becoming taller and larger. In order for lower creatures like slime to evolve, they need to eat several fruits. An ordinary slime will become big after eating a fruit. The big slime can turn into a slime king and then into a slime girl. After that, it only changes its body. But when it comes to advanced races like elves, they simply become superior, and that's their endpoint. Goblins can go through several stages of evolution. The hero, leaving the forest, decides that these stages of evolution can be stopped for now. Kotonoha, having arrived in the city and hearing greetings from the residents along the way, reflects on the fact that there are further stages of development, but for them, perhaps, much more fruits are needed. Sekai, greeting back, thinks that trying to achieve evolution too quickly is foolhardy, and that each new species has a strong impact on the ecosystem. Besides, some of the monsters may not be friendly at all. Situations similar to the one involving the Eldritch cultists should be avoided. The hero, based on this logic, decided to stop giving away his fruits so easily and ordered them to be stored in a warehouse to be used when necessary. Radif expresses a desire to build his own workshop. Kotonoha Sekai gives permission to do so, and the dwarf leader decides to begin immediately. The dwarves built their workshop in the blink of an eye. They built themselves houses and used the workshop to create weapons, doing all their work in it. The dwarf leader introduces the workshop to Sekai with satisfaction, telling him of his plans to make weapons there. The hero actively supports this decision. Radif says that they need to find suitable material to work with. One of the dwarves states that they have nothing but wood. Kotonoha believes that to create a good weapon, you need more serious materials than wood. The hero comes up with an idea and shows the dwarves the glowing bar. Radif, in awe, calls what he sees the legendary steel of Yggdrasil. Sekai does not understand him. Kotonoha says that it's just his branch, and he decided to use it because his branches have become stronger. But the dwarf leader insists on calling it Yggdrasil steel, and claims that he has seen something like it before. The hero is surprised that his branch is considered good material. Radolf says that anything can be made from it and calls the dwarfs to work. Radolf began to melt the bar furiously. The dwarves began to forge weapons. What happened amazed Sakai. A shining sword appeared before the heroes. Radolf asks Kotonoha to infuse magical power into the weapon. Sakai questions Radolf, trying to figure out why he needs to do this. The dwarf leader explains that the sword has no owner yet, and if the world tree infuses it with its magic, it will become the only holy sword in the world. Kotonoha doesn't know how to do this. He raises the sword above himself and glares at it, then closes his eyes. To the sound of a surprised cry, the sword changes. Radolf shouted in delight as the sword changed its shape on its own, thanks to the magical power of the world tree. He invites the hero to try swinging it. Sakai swings his sword in different directions with joyful interest. Kotonoha shares the feeling that the weapon has become a part of him, although this makes sense considering that it was once his branch. The hero wants to try the sword on something, and then a scream is heard. The bear demon rushes after the children, baring its teeth, which Benjamin immediately notifies about. Sakai gets the idea that the enemy appeared here as if on order, and asks to keep him for himself. Swinging his sword, he thinks it's the perfect test for the ball. With a loud cry, Kotonoha rushes at the bear. The beam from the holy sword strike passed through the entire forest, sawing through even the mountains. The demon fell to the ground. Sakai is amazed by the power of his sword. Radolf, laughing, says that this is his power too and asks what name he will give it. Kotonoha thought about it. The hero proclaimed the name that came to mind: Holy Sword Yggdrasil. Radolf thought it was a great idea. Sakai decided that it would be better to refrain from mass-producing weapons from his steel after what he had seen. The heroes decided to make weapons only for the city's residents, and not sell them to Mokoro. It was decided that sending weapons made from Yggdrasil steel was too risky, so they began making tools from it. They made excellent axes and hoes. Performing routine tasks has become much easier thanks to the new tools, but they decided to leave this within the city. Mokoro sold the World Tree wine at a very high price, and this greatly affected the market. Wine began to be used instead of potions, thus leaving doctors without work. However, the wine really did help, so the hero did nothing about its distribution. Sakai believes that the fruit of evolution and the steel of Yggdrasil are very unique. Kotonoha decides to be careful about selling to the rest of the world. Radolf runs into Sakai's house shouting, asking if what he heard was true. The hero confirms. He asks to make 8 more holy balls. Radolf thought anxiously after hearing the number. Kotonoha was talking about his desire to distribute these swords to the faction leaders. Sakai believes that in this way they will be able to achieve a balance of power, and then all nations will live in peace. He asks the dwarf if he will take the job. Radolf decides that this is the peak of his career. The dwarf leader furiously replies that he will give it his all. Rind is the first to receive his weapon. He asks Sakai if he can name the sword. The hero allows it. Rind asks his son to do this. He justifies his decision by saying that one day Yoku himself will become the leader of the goblins. Rind says that his son will be the next owner of the sword. Yoku is ready and names the weapon the Holy Sword Goblio. The son of the werewolf leader also poured power into his sword. Jonas gave him a name: Wolfgang. The sword of the Arachne people was called Arachnecreon. The elves had Elma. The holy sword of the slime was Slimbringer. The dwarves gave their sword the name Dwarform. The humans had Excalibur. The weapon of the orcs was called Ogarp. Thanks to all the holy swords, the city's defense became much stronger, and they became a symbol of the alliance of factions. The leaders of the nations raised their swords with a loud cry, thus signifying their union. Night fell upon the city. The dwarves, relaxing in the water under the moon, drank the wine of the world tree and admired its taste. They tell each other that thanks to wine they do not feel tired at all after long work. This unique alcohol even relieved physical pain. Suddenly, Radolf drops the bottle of wine into the water. He gets a little scared and feels guilty. But in the end, Radolf resigns himself and thinks that nothing terrible will happen. The dwarf jokes that now no one's back will hurt, and they laugh. The whole city fell asleep. Suddenly, something among the stones starts moving. This something turns out to be a skeleton wrapped in a cloak. He approaches the water. The skeleton steps into the water and experiences pleasant sensations. He feels warm in the bathhouse and relaxes. Suddenly, the space around him begins to glow. A powerful beam of light hits the skeleton. After the magical action, a man emerges from the water. He stands in the middle of the stonework and does not understand what happened. Isekai is awakened by joyful cries. He runs out of the house, and the goblin explains to him that the cries are coming from the bathhouse. The heroes run there. Kotonoha and Rin see silhouettes at the water source. They turn out to be a dark-haired man and woman. Rin asks who they are. The man, smiling, tells how they were resurrected thanks to the source. Right before their eyes, the water magically affects one of the skeletons. In joyful excitement, he takes on human features and says that he is alive again. Isekai finally realizes that the skeletons are resurrecting. Rind asks where they came from. The man explains that they are the undead that lived in this forest, and he found the source, climbed into it, and was resurrected. Kotonoha doesn't understand how ordinary water could produce such a result. Rydaf intervenes and admits that he dropped the World Tree wine into it. He makes excuses, but Sakai is already thinking that the drink is truly very powerful, since it even returns the undead to normal. The hero suggests that skeletons become people. He ponders what to do with them now. The first of the resurrected gives thanks for the hot spring. The man asks if they can stay in the city, says they can do absolutely everything. Kotonoha allows it, and thus 15 more people join them. The undead cannot die, but only wander here and there. But here they were able to gain a body and resurrect. The newfound people gratefully shake Radolf's hand for his lucky blunder. Guided by the logic of the previous event, Isekai decides that wine can also resurrect the dead. To test, he pours the drink on a dead animal, but it does not come back to life. Kotonoha, having built a grave, calms down, realizing that wine does not bring the dead back to life, and now would be too much. Due to the population growth, the production of faith has also increased. The hero thinks about how he could use this. He wants to continue developing the city. Isekai thinks that new buildings could be built and old goblin houses improved with each new arrival of faith. Goblins' skills are not yet developed enough to build large houses. They are only capable of a small mansion. But for the development of the city, larger houses are needed. They could be built with the help of faith. Kotonoha realizes that if the council gets any bigger, they won't fit in the mansion where it usually happens. He decides that they need a community center. The wind blows through the branches of the world tree. Isekai decides to build in the center opposite the tree. The hero actively gets to work, which scares Rinda a little. Kotonoha concentrates and begins to build the council building using her magical power. During the construction process, he decides that there should be a lot of space for the townspeople. Inside, Sakai constructs a large conference table and everything for the tea ceremony. The hero joyfully announces the building's readiness. Rydaf and Rhine stare in surprise at what has come out. A huge house stands out in the rays of the sun. A pleased Kotonoha announces that all meetings will now be held here. Rind notes that there is a lot of space inside. The heroes have found a small flaw in the work, and the goblin leader asks to provide it to them. Rind decides to eat first and then get to work. He thinks it's better not to light a fire inside and suggests eating outside. Thanks to this, Seikai gets the idea to build a dining room. The dwarf and goblin don't understand what it is. Thus, it was decided to build a dining hall behind the council chamber. You can eat whatever you like or have fun there. The dining room also has a kitchen, and it was decided to prepare a lot of food before the grand opening. Now there are new jobs, and thanks to trade with Moquirl, it will be possible to pay salaries. Org feels something is missing from his food while eating, which shocks Benjamin, who thinks he just doesn't like it. The orc leader says that it is not that, but that the stew is too ordinary. The goblin agrees with him. Gonzalez, who cooked this food, gets angry from unflattering comments. Henri tries to calm him down. The goblin can't take it anymore and yells at the offenders, saying that this is healthy nutrition, and if you eat vegetable stew, you will be a healthy goblin. Org rightly points out that he is not a goblin, and Benjamin begins to demand meat. Seikai, watching this, thinks that the orc leader is right. While a fight breaks out between Gonzalez and Benjamin, the hero comes to the conclusion that their food is simple and cheap, and sometimes you want something more interesting. He comes up with an idea and uses his magic power. The conflicting parties are shocked by the outcome. Kotonoha decides to build a restaurant where the food is more expensive, but there is more of it. He explains that this is a place for those who want more sophisticated food and are willing to pay. Benjamin wonders who the chef will be there. The slime girl announces that she has taken up this position, stating that she has always wanted to be one and hopes that everyone will like her dishes. Benjamin expresses a furious desire to try it right away, but Mimiko's wife appears behind him and stops him with grim determination. In front of everyone, she drags her husband to the exit, reminding him that he can eat at home. Benjamin makes excuses and says that he loves her. Slime announces that they are looking for new employees for the restaurant. Birds are flying over the forest. One day, a man came to town, introducing himself as the Wandering Bard, Sealed the Newer. He explains to Seikai that he likes to draw and saw a big tree, so he came here. The hero understands that the tree is huge, so it is not surprising that those who have seen it from neighboring lands can come here. According to rumors, the forest is dangerous, and therefore only the strong can get through it. Ciel asks for permission to stay. Seikai agrees, and the bard gains incredible experience communicating with the city's different peoples. He also shows off his drawing skills. Ciel's music also delights everyone. Even the World Tree enjoys it. Finally, the bard, gathering himself, holding the reins of his horse, thanks them for allowing him to stay, and says that he will never forget the time spent with them. The werewolf leader calls him a good man and smiles. Seikai asks him to be careful. Seikai, waving goodbye, promises that he will visit them again. The bard spent about a week in the city and said that he had been to different cities before. A few months after he left, someone appeared on the doorstep. The werewolf guarding the entrance wonders who stands before him. The new arrivals say that they learned about this place from Ciel. The girls explain that they are friends of the bard and often drink with them. And one day he showed his paintings and sang a song about the city. They were very interested, and that's why they came here. Seikai allows them to stay, and 2 more adventurers are added to the number of residents. The girls admire the city. The werewolf leader thanks them for the praise and says he will be glad to see them again. The adventurers hand them the chest. The werewolf opens it, and there is a bone among many coins. The girls thank them for everything and leave the city. The werewolf is pleased that they also left a lot of money. News about the city began to spread, and new guests began to come to them, and they all heard about this place from Seal. And the new arrivals told even more about the city. There were more and more tourists, but there was not enough space. Isekai built an inn for them. In addition, Kotonoha built several shops so that tourists could make purchases. Now you could buy almost everything in the store, and it turned into a full-fledged trading house. Wine from the World Tree, alcohol from the goblins, elves, and weapons from the dwarves were sold here. They also did business with Mokoro and sold to him at wholesale prices. People who used to be undead turned out to be masters of ancient crafts and sold various figurines and souvenirs. Many people began to come to the city. The shops were full. Rin decides that after another hard day, it's time to rest. He invites Sakai to have a drink together, and he agrees. While sitting in a restaurant, the goblin shares with Kotonoha that there is nothing else to do at the end of the day except drink. The hero, after thinking, agrees with Rin, realizing that entertainment is only for tourists. Watching the goblin devour a piece of meat, Sakai thinks about how there is almost nothing in the city now. The exception is the books that Mokoro brings, but we can't stop there. Putting the mug down on the table with a loud bang. The hero says that the weather is good outside, and he has accumulated enough faith now. He decides to start creating entertainment. Due to the increase in the number of tourists, the power of faith has also increased, and the World Tree influences the city more and more. Sekai has already tried many things with his power, such as creating even more fertilizer, but he couldn't do anything abstract. It also didn't work out to make a sword that could cut anything, because that would require a colossal amount of faith, if that were possible. Depending on the complexity of the creation, the required amount of faith also changes. And this time, Sakai decided to prepare entertainment for the city's residents. Kotonoha created the board game Go. Ella, seeing the game, thoughtfully asks what it is. Sakai replies that she will understand as soon as she plays. After a while, the elf thought that she understood the rules. They started the game. Benjamin decided to watch it. The first attempt ended in Sakai's loss. The hero writes it off as beginner's luck. But Ella won the next time too. As a result, the elf won 3 times in a row, and Kotonoha was left completely disappointed. Sekai notes that Ella was very pleased with the game, which means that the rest will most likely be the same. Benjamin comes to them and asks what they are doing there. Without thinking twice, he volunteers to try playing. Rind also expresses his desire to participate. Kotonoha is fully prepared to show them the top 3 players of the online tournament in Japan. The goblins also defeat Sakai. He is in complete disarray. Children look into the room and the hero asks if they want to play. He says that he has made many such games, so they can play as much as they want. Many people liked these games, so Sakai decided to give them away. They had a little tournament and everyone had a lot of fun. After the game started to get boring, Kotonoha decides to create a new one. He made chess. Sakai answers questions by saying that this game is much more interesting than the one before. Kotonoha received a fair amount of admiration for his invention. After that, he created many more games. While in his mansion, Sakai explains to his guest what he has made. Mokoto says that these games have become very popular and asks to sell the license for their production. The hero agrees, and so they began to sell their innovations. The games became popular outside the city, and to show whose idea it was, Sakai asked Mokoro to put his mark. The Seikai brand board games were a success, and Koton Hoha sold the license for a percentage of all sales. Even in the capital they became popular, and the hero's name became a household word. The king began to ask Mokoro about Sakai, and he said that the manufacturer was shy, so he did not show himself in public. The king tried to contact Mokoro through him, but the hero decided not to do so for now. The king was left with nothing, but was still interested. Seikai decided to create an amusement park. He made swings and many other things, and combined them into a park. The goblin children really enjoyed the new entertainment. The adults wanted to join in too, but the swings clearly weren't for them. With the help of workers and materials, Sakai decided to do something else. Rind asks Kotonoha if he's sure it was worth creating individual parts, and he says it's much easier and saves time. The resulting structure became equally popular with both adults and children. Werewolves also began to master the new entertainment. Their physical abilities and those of the goblins were higher than those of humans, so this was not even an obstacle for them. For them, Seikai increased the difficulty, but they managed to cope with it. Arachne has many legs, so she easily passed the track and field test and took first place. A young man comes to Sakai, introducing himself as Mokoro's son, Dwayne. Kotonoha expresses her joy at meeting a new person. An elderly merchant shares that he is planning to retire. He announced that his son would now work with the hero, which is why he brought him in. Seikai hands him the fruit of evolution and offers him to eat it. Mokoro thanks him for the fact that these fruits once saved his life, and he met his love. Thanks to Sakai's kindness, Dwayne was born. But Mokoro wants to spend the rest of his life with his beloved. Kotonoha understands and respects his decision. The merchant thanks him again. In the Japanese sense, he could still work, but in this world, life is shorter. Mokoro worked so hard because many people were poor. Besides that, he wanted to protect the world tree, so he took care of it. Sakai thinks he has done enough. When Kotonoha met the goblins, Mokoro was still young, and they had become much smarter and larger. Goblins live longer than humans, so it's no surprise that the merchant has already retired. Seikai hopes that he and Dwayne will work well together. Dwayne hopes the same, and wants to repay him for helping his father. The hero asks Dwayne to tell him about the country he lives in. He tells him that his country is located south of this city, and is called the Kingdom of Grinda. It is a prosperous country inhabited by many races and ruled by King Bonk. Seikai assumes that their city is within the kingdom's territory and asks if it will become part of it. Dwayne replies that by law, it is. Through Mokoro, they do a lot of business with the kingdom, and Mokoro's company is rumored to be closely connected to the royal family, as it is number one in the country. The merchant was even the mayor of the prosperous city of Frankfurt. Duyan shares that his father has spoken a lot about Sakai to the king and hopes that he will visit the city one day. The boy asks if Kotonoha knows what he is called. It turns out that the city is called the settlement of Yggdrasil. Seikai is not surprised, because the locals themselves often call him that. The hero decided that it was a good name, and he thought that, given the growth of tourists, he could try to increase his earnings. They earn enough money from working with the Mokoro Company. Seikai decides to call it the Luck Company. Faith is growing rapidly as tourists become more and more fond of the city. Kotonoha decides to think of something to earn more. He approaches one of Mokoro's men and asks if there are casinos in other cities. He answers yes. He adds that most major cities have casinos and even brothels. Sakai's plan fails, and he becomes slightly disappointed. The hero believes that since casinos already exist in this world, there is no point in building them. But it is possible to find out what condition they are in, which is what he does. The man lists what is there: roulette, poker. Sekai is shocked by the news. He comes to the conclusion that card games are well developed here. Sekai suggests that perhaps the god has sent someone else to this world who brought similar games, but it could also be a coincidence. The hero creates a mechanism for the game. He thinks about what to do next. After all, this way their casino will be no different from the rest. A modern casino is pachinko and slot machines. But in this world, there is no electricity, which means it is difficult to create. But Sekai comes up with an idea. You can try to do what you have planned with the help of faith. The hero decides to try. He feels how much strength of faith is spent on this. As Sekai screams, a powerful burst of magical energy is released. The hero sees the resulting gaming machine in front of him. He started working despite the lack of electricity. Sekai notes that he has used up almost all of his faith, so it will not be possible to launch such machines into mass production. Kotonha can even create a computer with his magical powers, but he decides not to disrupt the normal growth rate of this world with the benefits of modernity. Even though electricity would make life better, but first of all, Sekai needs to accumulate a lot of faith, and he will try to do this with the help of the casino. Ella senses that the machine is powered by magic. Rind guesses that the hero is going to use it to attract tourists. Sekai confirms, because the more the client spends, the more he gets. El Kotonoha suggests changing her outfit for work. Rind is surprised that people wear rabbit costumes in the casino. The casino really became popular, and the power of faith began to grow. The most popular machine was the pachinko machine. Sekai decided to place the money spent on this machine in plain sight for everyone to see. This made people spend even more money to get a big win. But almost no one won it, so the machine became known as a swamp. However, as soon as someone received a prize, everyone immediately returned, investing more and more money. In order to ensure that public peace is not disturbed, orc police began to be on duty in the city. If something happened, the orcs would immediately drive out the troublemakers. Sekai's faith grew very quickly, but it was still not enough to create electrical appliances. The king was a little ill, and Mokoro offered him to drink the wine of the world tree. Suddenly, a merchant arrives in the city again. Sekai greets Mokoro happily and asks what his business is here. At Kotonoho's mansion, a merchant asks if he can come to the Grinda Kingdom. After all, King Bomb wants to meet him and thank him.